Audiobook by Fate's Reader. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel for more epic series. Drop your recommended novel below. We love to know what you want to hear next. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 201. Taking Advantage. Right Guardian put her hands on her hips and sneered at the sky. Bald donkey, stay if you have the guts to. Old woman, I can scold you for 3 days and 3 nights straight in all kinds of ways. A bodhisattva sneered. Shweb-i-e, all you have left is that mouth of yours. Ignore them, said old Rulai who was on Mount Meru. If we continue squabbling with them, it may take us half a year. We have fought for a few hundred years and squabbled for a couple more, so there's no need to be impatient now. Let us take control of this battle first. The monks on the mountain didn't stop and the apparition of Mount Meru floated over to the battlefield. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was still fighting with Teacher Poor and the rest, trying his best to get rid of all these strong practitioners before the apparition of Mount Meru reached them. At this moment, old Rulai's voice traveled over unhurriedly. Imperial Preceptor, Dao friends, can you guys do me a favor? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's sword chi dispersed, and he stopped chasing Teacher Poor and the bronze-masked man. With a smile, he said, Rulai, please speak. Excellent, may Dao friends hold back, old Rulai said solemnly. Teacher Poor and the rest were ready to make their moves when they heard Rulai and hesitated for a moment. True Lord Tian was coughing up blood endlessly since her heart and lungs had been injured by Imperial Preceptor's sword chi. With a sharp voice, she asked, Old Rulai, are you going to join hands to get rid of this evil? Old Rulai shook his head. Wanderer Li's expression changed slightly and he sneered. Could it be that great Thunderclap Monastery has also become the dogs of Eternal Peace Empire like Heavenly Devil Cult? Old Rulai shook his head again. Teacher Poor said indifferently, Old Dao friend, stop keeping us in suspense. Just tell us directly. Old Rulai chuckled. I'm here to create good karma with everyone and settle this contentious issue. Everyone here is a cultivator, and if we continue fighting, how many heroes will be lost, how many inheritances will disappear? Why don't we turn hostility into friendship, be polite and amiable, putting an end to each other's karma? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's gaze wavered, but he did not say anything. Old Rulai looked at him and smiled. Imperial Preceptor is a kind man and had come to my great Thunderclap Monastery once. I spoke to Imperial Preceptor about Buddhism, about Mahayana, and formed good karma with him. May I know if Imperial Preceptor can return this good karma back to this old monk? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said solemnly. Back then I was still young and traveled the world to seek knowledge. When I came to Great Thunderclap Monastery, Rulai didn't have sectarian bias and gave me pointers for my cultivation. Therefore, I can be considered half a disciple of Great Thunderclap Monastery, and it's only right of me to return this good karma. However, how would I know if I'm not releasing the tiger back into the mountains? These people are the masterminds behind the rebels. Would they give up just like this? If they rebel again, lives are going to be lost again. Rulai, you are benevolent and should know what I'm worried about. Old Rulai smiled. Old monk will make them convert to Great Thunderclap Monastery and not interfere with the matters of the mundane world anymore. What does Imperial Preceptor think of this? Imperial Preceptor didn't express any opinion. Old Rulai smiled as he looked at Teacher Poor and the rest. Everyone here was outstanding talents back in the day and had magnificent styles unmatched in our generation. After being powerful your entire life and living through an era in splendor, would you guys be willing to put down your arms and convert to Buddhism? True Lord Tian sneered. Old Rulai, with us and your great Thunderclap Monastery, won't it be easy to eliminate this evil? Do you think your great Thunderclap Monastery will be safe if you give up on this chance now? After Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor eliminates us, he will definitely eliminate Buddha as well. Why aren't you showing your devil-subduing methods and attack him mercilessly now? Old Rulai smiled in answer. No matter how Imperial Preceptor treats my Buddhism, there will still be people that believe and worship Buddha. No matter if there are devils or gods in this world, while there's conviction, Buddhism won't disappear just because Imperial Preceptor eliminates us, nor will it thrive if he supports us. If you are willing to let go of your grudges, follow me. If you aren't willing, this old monk can only say we're not fated. I'll take my leave. Suddenly, figures hurriedly descended from the sky and landed behind Imperial Preceptor. There were 100 generals of Eternal Peace Empire wearing blood-stained armor and radiating a desire to battle that surged into the sky. Duke Wei exclaimed with his big mouth. What happened? Rulai is here to join in the fun too? Trying to take advantage? Imperial Preceptor. Let us clean up this old monk and the rest of the bald. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor raised his hand to stop him from saying any more. He then whispered, It's not good to let both sides suffer. It's a good thing for old Rulai to come forth and mediate. Duke Wei was bewildered, not understanding what he meant. They're clearly here to take advantage, taking this chance to recruit the masterminds of the rebels into their great Thunderclap Monastery, strengthening its power. These masterminds are all powerful people, and letting them go is equivalent to letting the tigers back onto the mountain. There will be endless troubles afterward. Imperial Preceptor, think thrice. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor smiled. Since old Rulai gave his word that they will not interfere with the matters of the mundane world after they convert to Buddhism, I believe him. You really believe him? Duke Wei stared with his eyes wide open. You can't trust a person with no hair on his head with an important task. When he was about to say more, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor raised his hand and said indifferently, Old Rulai is the head of Buddhism, and it's a good deed to come and resolve our grudges, returning peace back to the world. Furthermore, I'm also injured. On Mount Meru, the Bodhisattvas and Arhats heard what he said and turned their heads over. Old Rulai chanted one of the many names of Buddha to warn all the Bodhisattvas and Arhats. He then smiled. Since Imperial Preceptor is willing to resolve the grudges, how about you guys? Teacher Poor and the rest of them looked one another in the eyes and nodded silently. If they didn't agree to convert to Buddhism, old Rulai would not lift his finger to save them. After he left with all the strong practitioners of Great Thunderclap Monastery, they would definitely die under the hands of Imperial Preceptor. For old Rulai to bring all of the strong practitioners of Great Thunderclap Monastery, this meant that he was determined to win. If they agreed to convert to Great Thunderclap Monastery, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor wouldn't dare to probe further. Old Rulai smiled. Since all senior brothers and sisters are willing to put down their grudges and convert to Buddhism, this world is an illusion and you're sure to achieve your Tao. Imperial Preceptor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor pointed at the bronze-masked man and said, Rulai, he must stay. The bronze-masked man felt a lingering fear in his heart, and old Rulai frowned slightly. The Bodhisattvas, Arhats, and Venerables on the apparition of Mount Meru chanted the many names of Buddha. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said with a smile, He must stay. Even though his voice was light, his tone said that this was unquestionable and non-negotiable. Old Rulai sighed. This kind man, you have no fate with Buddhism. Teacher Poor, fellow senior brothers and sisters, please come up the mountain. Teacher Poor and the rest hesitated for a moment, looking at the bronze-masked man. They suddenly gritted their teeth and moved to Mount Meru. They said together in unison, Old, we're sorry. There's no need for further words, I understand. The bronze-masked man laughed out loud. Imperial Preceptor, how are you going to deal with me? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said expressionlessly. I'll take you down and escort you to the capital city to meet the Emperor. Escort me to the capital city to meet the Emperor? The bronze-masked man's tone was quite weird when he spoke, but he smiled nonetheless. Then we'll have to see if Imperial Preceptor's sword is fast enough. He slowly raised his palm and suddenly smashed it against his bronze mask. It shattered into pieces, destroying the face beneath as well. Imperial Preceptor, the empire of Ling family will be ruined under your hands sooner or later. His head split open and he died right away, but his body stood there straight like a rod and never collapsed. Duke Wei and the rest cried out and hurried forward while Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stood motionless. He hadn't intercepted the bronze-masked man when he was about to take his own life on purpose. On the mountain far away, the corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched when he saw this. For Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor to say that sentence was to force the bronze-masked man to suicide. No matter whose face was under the mask, he had to be someone high in the royal family, someone with an important position. He was a person of utmost importance to the emperor. If he was taken alive by Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and escorted into the capital city to meet the emperor, not only would the emperor be embarrassed, even the hearts of ministers would deviate. It would even become a problem for the emperor whether he should kill him or not. When his true face was revealed, the emperor's prestige would receive a severe hit and people from all levels of society would discuss it in secret, guessing if it was the man himself who had the intention to start a rebellion or if it was the will of the emperor. At that time, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's prestige would surpass that of the emperor and most of the minister's heart would lean towards him as well. Even the emperor would start to guard against him. If an internal conflict between the emperor and imperial preceptor started, the empire would be in danger, and the Ling family would be in danger as well. As a higher up of the royal family, the bronze-masked man had to take his life. He couldn't let the Ling family be on the defensive, throw its face away. Because of this, he had to disfigure himself so that no one would know his true identity. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't stop him as he hoped that the man would take his life. He didn't want to escort him to the capital city to meet the emperor. If the man didn't disfigure himself, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would have helped him do so. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't want to smack the emperor's face or the Ling family's face. This was the best conclusion. If Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor really escorted this bronze-masked man back to the capital, it would mean that he really wanted to rebel and take over the throne. From the looks of it now, the throne didn't matter to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. He only wanted to borrow Eternal Peace Empire to execute his aspiration, to achieve the 3 immortal deeds. He wanted to become a saint. From Mount Meru, Rulai paid his respects to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Imperial Preceptor, now that everything is settled, this old monk will be taking his leave. Take care, Rulai, said Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor as he returned the formalities. The apparition of Mount Meru floated away to the west. Teacher Por, True Lord Tian, and the rest turned back their heads to see Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor giving the command to chop off the head of the bronze-masked man to bury it on the spot. The headless body was put into a coffin and prepared to be transported back to the capital. Wanderer Li sighed. Dao brother Rulai, if not for you. Old Rulai shook his head. There's no need to say anything more. Imperial Preceptor is already dissatisfied with my great Thunderclap Monastery. Let's go back to the mountain. I reckon my sinful disciple has already taken the opportunity to return to take his arm back. If we return in time, we might still meet him. The monks on the mountain were astonished. The apparition of Mount Meru floated past the mountain Qin Mu and the rest were on and sneers came from below again. Bald donkeys! The bodhisattvas, arhats, and venerables shouted one after another. Evil creatures of the devil path. Old Rulai shook his head and halted Mount Meru. He looked down and put his palms together. Senior brother. Most of the hall masters and guardians were astonished. Sword Hall Master gently shook his head at Qin Mu, but Qin Mu waved his hand and bowed his head. Senior brother. Old Rulai revealed an astonished expression and nodded before leading everyone away. Cult Master. Why did you have to return that bald donkey's greeting? Right Guardian Shui Bai grumbled. Now that you exposed your true identity, you will be in the radar of that damned old badly. Something will definitely happen. As the sacred cult master, I can't not return the greeting after he greeted me as an equal. Qin Mu smiled. We can't keep hiding the fact that I'm the sacred cult master. Besides, I can't throw the face of all of you nor the face of the sacred cult. Everyone said in unison. We rather not have this face. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 202. Steaming the Imperial Preceptor. On Mount Meru's apparition, a bodhisattva put his palms together. My Buddha, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said he was injured. Why didn't we take the chance? Is it real or fake? Old Rulai asked amiably and gently. The bodhisattva was stunned. Disciple does not know. Old Rulai smiled. Those that believed so have already lost, and some of them even died. Teacher Poor, it's because you guys believed he was injured that it was such a defeat, wasn't it? The expressions of Teacher Poor and the rest were ashen, and spiritual master Dao Quan blamed himself deeply. From the medicinal dregs of Qin Mu, he deduced that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had been severely injured and everyone believed him, which was why they had chosen the second choice, the martial way. However, he couldn't be blamed for it all. The surprise attack by the three old monsters of the old generation, Teacher Poor, Wanderer Li, and True Lord Tian, had to have severely injured Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. The three old monsters were the peak existences of today's world. No matter if it were their abilities or reputation, they were at the top in the martial world. No one would doubt the abilities of these three seniors, so even though Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was known as the genius that comes once in every 500 years and had a high reputation, he still couldn't be compared to any of the three. It was because of this that everyone believed that he was severely injured. The tiny details that came after only strengthened this notion. For example, when he gave a lecture in Imperial College, he only did so for 2 days, and there was perfume to cover the stink of his wound. There was also the event of the Dragon King of Dragon Riders sect visiting Imperial Preceptor's manor at night and leaving unscathed. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor hadn't been able to hold him back. In the battle between Imperial Preceptor and Wanderer Zhan of Little Jade Capital, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's injuries had relapsed, which was why he needed Qin Mu, this little divine physician, to nurse his body day and night. The deduction of spiritual master Dao Quan and all kinds of other things indicated that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's injuries had relapsed. It was then deduced that even with Qin Mu's treatment, he would require at least a month to recover. And all of this had begun when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was ambushed. From the very start, they were destined to be made use of in his scheme. The two choices were also part of the scheme. There had never been two choices, only one. It's not so easy to deal with a genius that appears once every 500 years, Old Rulai said indifferently. These 500 years don't only mean his wisdom, aptitude, and comprehension are that profound, but his strategies and tactics are also something one may see only once in 500 years. If such a genius can't become a saint, then he will become a lawless devil, and it won't be fortuitous to this world. Believe? He smiled, then said, "Fool." Everyone was bewildered. They didn't know why Old Rulai had said this kind of words, but they felt that his speech was concise and comprehensive, having a deep meaning. Beggar Sect Master Chi Dio said, he had allied himself with Heavenly Devil Cult and is destined to be a lawless devil. What a pity we don't know who's the new cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult. We know. Old Rulai smiled. It's none other than the young man that returned my greeting. Come to think of it, this old monk had a destiny with him and wanted to enlighten him to Great Thunderclap Monastery. But it's a pity that the destiny was suddenly broken and passed on to another wonderful being. It's him. Most of the monks, Teacher Poor, and the rest of people on Mount Meru were stunned for a moment. Old Rulai smiled. It's him. Those old Dao friends are quite remarkable, to have taught such a little devil. What a pity Kakura staff couldn't retain its destiny. I was only a step late. Only a step. Imperial Preceptor, you're smarter than me. Couldn't you see any problems with Mount Meru's arrival? Duke Wei looked at the headless body entering the coffin and turned his head to talk to Imperial Preceptor who was beside him. They were clearly here to take advantage of the situation and save Teacher Poor and the other old monsters, strengthening the power of their Great Thunderclap Monastery. If these people aren't rid of, they will be a problem in the future. Teacher Poor and the rest have only 10 to 20 years left, so they are of no concern. Let Old Rulai save them, said Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. I understand Old Rulai's actions. It's as expected that he came to take advantage of the timing. I'm injured, so I had no strength to stop him. Duke Wei sized him up in suspicion, his expression quite weird. Real or fake? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said solemnly, It's real. Are you sure? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor scowled at him. Of course it's real. You try fighting with those cult master level existences. And there were even 3 godlike existences among them. How can I be unscathed when it was a fight to the death with them? I don't believe, Duke Wei said resentfully. I'd be a fool to do so. I won't believe a word you say. Those that believed you are all lying in coffins, unable to move an inch. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Actually, I'm quite truthful sometimes. That's why you can trick others convincingly. I can't read you. Duke Wei looked down at the coffin and kept quiet for a moment. You should know who is in the coffin. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head. I can't say. I will know even if you don't say. When we go back to the capital, we will know once we see which old prince has suddenly died. Duke Wei looked left and right before whispering. There's a conflict in Ling family, and this won't be an isolated incident. What if the old Empress Dowager is the same? I feel that you should take a step further and just be the emperor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor glanced at him with murderousness in his gaze. Duke Wei jumped in shock and hurriedly said, You and I have been friends for over 200 years. Don't scare me. This isn't my idea, this is what the old brothers that are following you think. Your position has been raised to the max, so even if you do an enormous contribution, there will be no way for the emperor to raise your official position anymore. Now that you have done another huge contribution by quelling the rebellion, how do you want the emperor to reward you? To hand the throne over to you? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head. The emperor and I are bosom buddies. The emperor knows me and knows I won't ask for credit. What I want is to achieve the aspiration of my lifetime. That's why the emperor is troubled. If he won't reward you, everyone in the world will be bitterly disappointed. If he wants to reward you, there's nothing he can reward you with. Do you want him to give you beautiful women? Do you want him to give you gold? Duke Wei said in a low voice. The emperor knows you well, but what about the crown prince? When the crown prince succeeds the throne in the future, will he know you as well as his father? What would the crown prince use to reward you? Furthermore, those old brothers that have followed you all their life can also get promoted if you go a step further. Some can't wait to be promoted, and if they want to achieve that, they have to support you up to the throne. What do you think Empress Dowager is worried about? About you? She's worried about those people under you. I seek my own path. There's no need for you to say anything else. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked forward while speaking calmly. It's tiring to talk to you. You shall just quell the rebellion properly and clean up all the rebel remnants. I shall find the little divine physician to treat me. Treat you again? Duke Wei was puzzled. You're really hurt? You aren't lying to me again. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't give him a pleasant look and waved his hand as he walked away. Qin Mu brought the dragon Qilin, Chun Wanyun, Yu Qinghong, and the rest down the mountain. Meanwhile, all the hall masters, as well as left and right guardians of Heavenly Devil Cult, activated their teleportation flags to leave. Below the mountain, Qin Mu and the rest met Imperial Preceptor. I'm injured, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said. PSSH. The dragon Qilin tried to stifle its laughter. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gave a glance at this enormous creature, and the dragon Qilin immediately shut its mouth. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's complexion was a little pale as he told Qin Mu, I'm injured. Qin Mu asked suspiciously, Real or fake? It's real. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's complexion grew even paler. You serious? It's true. Veins started to pop out on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's forehead. All right then. Only an empty city remained in place of Daxiang City, which was razed to the ground. There was no medicine store here, so they could only return to Hidden Fog City. There was a lake around here which frequently saturated the air with fog. The city ended up appearing and disappearing in the fog, which was how it got its name. In a governmental office, Qin Mu checked on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's injuries and discovered that there were more than 100 places in which he was wounded. Most of them were internal injuries, and there were even venomous insects in his body. There were also injuries in his divine treasure, but he was lucky. The injuries were all different, and the ones that had invaded his divine treasures were especially hard to deal with, testing Qin Mu's medical skills. The injuries in the Spirit Embryo Divine Treasure, 5 Elements Divine Treasure, 6 directions divine treasure, 7 stars divine treasure, celestial being divine treasure, life and death divine treasure, and divine bridge divine treasure were all abnormally hard to deal with. The injuries on the soul were also a huge test. This was a rare opportunity for Qin Mu to learn about the secrets of the divine treasures in great depth. The external injuries, on the other hand, weren't as severe. If he wanted to nurse Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's injuries, it was going to be a huge project. Qin Mu calculated for quite some time before setting his mind on a treatment method and ordering people to collect the herbs. Most of the herbs in the medicine store were ordinary ones, with the precious ones being harder to find. Even though Hidden Fog City was large, there were still many herbs that were unavailable here and required them to seek them out in the capital. Qin Mu first treated the injuries that could be treated with the herbs available. The other injuries would have to wait until they were back in the capital. In the governmental office, Qin Mu ordered to find him an incomparably huge pot. The pot was then filled with water and herbs, and a huge steamer was placed inside to let Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor lie inside naked. Hundreds of needles were pierced into his body, their points reaching his divine treasures. The silver needles were used as a bridge to draw the medicinal energy into the divine treasures. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor lay inside the steamer quietly when he suddenly said, "If the Emperor rewards me with beautiful women and gold, should I want them?" Qin Mu twirled the needle in the heart of his brows. That silver needle had a hollow center which could help guide the medicinal energy. "What else can the Emperor reward you with?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was silent for a moment. "There's nothing else." "Then you should take them." Qin Mu took another needle and jabbed it into the lungs. "Who else is in Imperial Preceptor's house? Other than me, just a few old servants and bodyguards." "How much money do you have?" "The salary every month is enough for me." "Do you have a wife or children?" "With heaven's law in one's heart, what's the need for desire?" "Imperial Preceptor should start a family." "You should stop talking. After I place this needle, I will have to cover the steamer and raise the fire." After half a month, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had regained much of his complexion. While treating him, they had passed by 15 cities, yet Qin Mu had not found all the spirit herbs he needed. However, the injuries were more or less cared for. Qin Mu was proficient in using medicine, so when not having top-quality spirit herbs, he used ordinary ones to replace them. However, some injuries really needed incomparably precious spirit herbs which left him helpless. When they reached the capital, they saw white lanterns and white banners hanging on numerous streets. After asking around, they learned that North Garrison King Ling Yinfeng had passed away. The emperor was mourning, so the entire empire was grieving. North Garrison King Ling Yinfeng was the younger brother of the former emperor and was ranked 8, so he was referred to as 8 Imperial Uncle. He was well respected and loved by the people, since when the former emperor was conquering the world, 8 Imperial Uncle had outstanding military service, conquering numerous countries. The injuries he received were very severe, and he had almost died a few times in battle, yet he had also saved the life of the former emperor quite a few times. The successful ascension of Emperor Yanfeng to the throne was due to his support. He played a huge part in paving out the empire of the Ling family. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 203. The Cripple That Deserved to be Trusted. When Qin Mu heard the news, he frowned slightly and took a look at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. The man revealed a mournful expression and said, "I'll be offering my condolences to North Garrison King's Manor." Qin Mu asked in a low voice, "Imperial Preceptor, why did North Garrison King rebel?" "He's not rebelling against the Emperor. He's rebelling against me for the empire of his Ling family," Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said in a soft voice. "My power is too great, making him feel uneasy. He thinks I will overturn the rule of Ling family." "You're right. It's time for me to start my family. Even with heaven's law in my heart, desires are still needed." Qin Mu had a weird expression. Someone like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor starting a family? It was more or less beyond people's belief, yet it was about to happen. "I shall return to the manor first to change into robes of quiet colors." North Garrison King had contributed to the empire, and even though he didn't agree with my way of handling things, he was still a person deserving respect. I have to pay my respects to him. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor then bade farewell to Qin Mu. Now that we're at the capital, you won't have to trouble yourself with my injuries anymore. Qin Mu nodded. Since Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's injuries from the previous ambush had been healed, this meant that he had a divine physician by his side. Thus there was no need for Qin Mu to continue treating him. When Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor returned to his manor, he was vigilant. He didn't walk through the main door but jumped into the manor directly. Looking around at the surroundings, he saw that all the seals were still in their places. Yet he didn't let his guard down and called out solemnly, "Old Fu, Yuan Qing." There was no sound in reply. Imperial Preceptor's manor was unusually quiet. He walked in, and when he reached the hall, he saw his servants and bodyguards tied up and piled together. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor frowned, then saw Fu Yuanqing. Little Poison King Fu Yuanqing was stripped of all his clothes and trussed up on the ceiling of the hall. His tongue was sticking out, a golden rope tied around it. At the other end of the golden rope was a huge iron weight which was pretty heavy. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor frown deepened, and the sword light on his fingertips flashed, slicing apart the ropes on his body. Fu Yuanqing crashed heavily to the ground, and only then did Imperial Preceptor discover that all the cultivation in the man's body had been sealed, and as well as his divine treasures. Because of this, he couldn't unleash any bit of cultivation. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor broke the seals on him and the other servants and bodyguards. With a solemn face, he asked, "What happened?" "I have no idea." Fu Yuanqing shook his head in shame. "I didn't see anything before I got hung up there, and I didn't see anything even when my tongue was pulled out. A huge iron weight was then tied to it, so I couldn't cry for help even if I wanted to." "Old Master, is our manor haunted?" A few servants looked terrified. One of them said, "I also saw nothing before finding myself in the pile of others, unable to move." "Haunted?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, "It's not a ghost. That person's speed was too fast, so fast that you guys could not see him. I know who this person is. He must have barged into my manor to take advantage of me not being around to take back his leg. If I'm not wrong, my treasury should also have been emptied out. He brought everyone to the treasury only to see the seal on it still there, untouched." Fu Yuanqing let out a sigh of relief and smiled. "Imperial Preceptor, you have guessed wrong. The seal is still here. I reckon the thief couldn't break your seal, so he didn't touch the items inside." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor sighed. "A phantom has no form, he can pilfer the heavens and switch out the sun, so why would he need to break the seal? He can pass through the seal directly, without touching it in the slightest. The treasury is indeed emptied." Everyone didn't believe him. He then opened the seal and pushed the door open, revealing the treasury to be empty, cleaned out to the point it was spick and span. On the room's opposite wall, a painting had been hanging before. It portrayed the back of Sword God drawn by Heavenly Painting Country's crown prince, but it was gone without a trace now. In place of it were scribbles that were shocking to read. "Imperial Preceptor, I took back my leg. Thanks for your treasures as well. Your servants were treated quite well by me, so there's no need to worry. Oh, I also slept on your bed, and after I woke up, I took a dump on it. I even made a pot of fragrant tea for you in your study room. Our grudges are thus cleared, but you don't need to thank me." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's expression darkened. He immediately went to his bedroom and lifted the blanket. When the stink permeated the air, he covered his nose and waved his hand. "Old Fu, throw it away, throw it away." Old Fu immediately bundled up the blanket along with the bedsheet, but the stink came from the bed as well. Old Fu asked, "Old Master, do you want to throw the bed away as well?" "Throw it away." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor waved his hand and went to the study room with quick steps. The entire study room had the smell of urine, and the yellowish liquid in the teapot was clearly not tea. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's sleeves swept the teapot out the window along with the teacups, his face black. "Disgraceful. Never mind him taking his leg back, but to even eat, sleep, and poop in my manner to spoil my peace. Old Fu, prepare another tea set and bed. Old Fu hesitated for a moment before saying, Old Master, there isn't much money left. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was slightly stunned. He then mumbled to himself, the Emperor's reward will take a few more days to come. My salary comes once every month, but it will only be given at the start of the month. This month's salary is gone. This time Old Master had gone out, you took more than half of the salary with you. The rest of it was used to send some meager gifts to the kings, dukes, and ministers for their birthdays. Those that had given birth to a son also had to be sent a gift. A few days ago it was the Empress Dowager's birthday, and the gift I prepared was even disdained for being unpresentable. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's head started to ache. North Garrison King has passed away, so some gifts are needed. Are we really broke? Is there anything we can pawn? This? Old Fu hesitated for a moment, then decided not to say anything. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked around, but even though the house wasn't small, there wasn't a lot of furniture around. There wasn't anything that could be pawned. He always felt that infatuation with fine details prevents one from making progress, so all the stuff he ate and used were simple things, nothing fancy. The things he collected were mostly weird. Cripple's leg, the painting of Heavenly Painting Country's crown prince. Yet even these things were stolen by that thief god. Can we ask for the salary in advance? Old Fu asked, Old Master, do you still want your face? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor hesitated. Could we borrow some? Old Fu shook his head. We recently went to war and the few people that Old Master is well acquainted with have been deployed and are no longer at home. Who would lend me money when the head of their house is not around? Unless Old Master went personally. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor muttered. My painting skills aren't bad and could be sold for some cash. Is Old Master going to sign it? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head. If I sign my name, the person buying the painting would be bribing me. I won't sign. Old Fu shook his head. In that case, Old Master's painting won't sell. Those words pissed off Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. How do you know it won't sell? I've had the painting of Heavenly Painting Country's crown prince for a long time and copied it countless times. Even though I don't dare to say I'm comparable to Art Saint, but shouldn't that be good enough? Old Master, what kind of place is the capital? There are so many famous scholars around that they all look like carps crossing the river. How much do they earn by selling their paintings? More than half of those people are starving to the point they're skin and bones. Old Master, how well do you think your skills fare when compared to theirs? Old Fu then said, on the other hand, Old Master's disciples can lend money to Old Master. Borrow money from my disciples? I can't lower myself to that. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor suddenly thought of Qin Mu and smiled. I know who has money that I can borrow. He's liberal with his money and would usually pay when buying herbs for me. Otherwise, with that salary of mine, it would have been long gone. He's also not in the imperial court, so it's not embarrassing to borrow from him. I shall go and borrow money. You guys wait for me here. When Qin Mu returned back to Scholar's residence, he could smell a medicinal fragrance the moment he entered. It seemed to be coming from his courtyard, which bewildered him. Although there were odd job workers cleaning Scholar's residence, every one of them would often go to the hall to sit for lessons, so their cultivations weren't weak. There were some odd job workers who were even stronger than the scholars. In the history of Imperial College, there were quite a few odd jobs workers that had cultivated extraordinary abilities which allowed them to leap into the position of scholars and be promoted to reputable officers. With odd job workers guarding Scholar's residence, almost no one was able to sneak inside. Qin Mu brought the dragon Qilin and Hu Linger into his courtyard and saw huge bags of herbs piled up in his courtyard. There was even stuff like a medicinal furnace, medicinal cauldron, etc. The medicinal furnace and medicinal cauldron were extraordinary. The markings on them were extremely extraordinary, which made it clear that they were precious treasures. They weren't inferior to the treasures Qin Mu had taken from Roland's golden palace. Inside a medicinal cauldron there was a leg, and there was an arm in the medicinal furnace. When Qin Mu saw these two limbs, he was slightly stunned. He told Hu Linger and the dragon Qilin, "Stay guard outside the courtyard and don't let anyone enter." Hu Linger and the dragon Qilin got up and walked out of the courtyard. Qin Mu turned his head back to see the dragon Qilin squeezing through the creaking door frames and shook his head. "This fellow is getting fatter by the day. Very soon he'll probably break my door and I'll have to get a new one again." He pushed open the door to the main room and saw two men that were old and yet not that old sitting inside. Cripple had tidied himself. His hair was glossy black, while the beard under his chin was also tied up with a dazzling golden thread. The clothes he was wearing were also quite tastefully chosen. Old Ma sat opposite him and wore green clothing that wasn't as gaudy as Cripple's. One of his sleeves drooped down emptily, and he looked travel-worn. He must have arrived not too long ago, so his sideburns were grizzled and his hair was messy. When they saw Qin Mu walking in, Cripple revealed a simple smile while Old Ma's cold face brightened up. "Grandpa Ma! Grandpa Cripple!" Qin Mu felt moved and his eyes grew red. "Are you two here to see me?" "No," Old Ma replied. Qin Mu's felt hurt and Cripple smiled. "You are living more comfortably than us, so why do we have to come and see you? You're just someone we picked up, so why would we travel thousands of miles just to see you? Don't think too much." Qin Mu retorted angrily. "You're clearly here to see me." Cripple shook his head. "I'm just here to have you reattach my leg. Can you help me see if my leg is still alive?" "I won't." Cripple flew into a fury. "You rascal, turning independent? We're certainly not here to see you." Old Ma gave a cough and said unhurriedly, "If you're not here to see him, why didn't you bring your leg to apothecary instead? Stop teasing him. Look at him. He's about to cry." "I'm not crying," Qin Mu said, putting up an act. All right, stop crying. I'm here to see you. I just returned from Imperial Preceptor's Manor, having stayed there for quite some time. I also took some items while I'm there as well. Do you see that leg in the cauldron?" This elder was very proud of himself. "My leg. I took it back from Imperial Preceptor's Manor and Imperial Preceptor couldn't do anything about it. He could only look at me helplessly as I took back my leg." Qin Mu kept quiet for a moment before letting out a warm smile. "Grandpa Cripple, Imperial Preceptor, and I just came back. So what Imperial Preceptor was there in the Imperial Preceptor's Manor?" Cripple stared at him, and Qin Mu didn't give in, staring right back. The smiles on their faces were similarly warm and gave others a feeling that they could be trusted. Even if one was stabbed by them, they would still think they deserved to be trusted. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 204. Qin Mu's Dark Past. Qin Mu and Cripple continued staring at each other. Old Ma was warm-hearted despite looking cold. "We're all adults, so stop throwing a tantrum. We're here to see how you're getting by and if our limbs are still usable." Cripple smiled. "Old Ma had run over here from Great Thunderclap Monastery, so you should know he's here to see you specifically. Great Thunderclap Monastery is thousands of miles away from here and only 1,000 miles away from disabled elderly village. As for me, I'm not here to see you. My leg was at Imperial Preceptor's Manor, and you happen to be the closest." Qin Mu's heart was warmed when Old Ma said, "Don't mind Cripple's harsh words. He's actually a good man. When you were young and always wet your bed, Granny was annoyed by you as she had never raised a child before, so she wanted to send you away to be raised by the neighboring village. When you were sent over the first day, you were back on Granny's bed on the next. Granny sent you over a few times more, yet you always came back mysteriously. It was Cripple, of course, who had stolen you back." Cripple shook his head. "I did not. I hate kids the most. If I didn't have just one leg, I would have kicked his balls daily." Qin Mu felt a stab of pain, and he said in disbelief, "Granny sent me away because I wet the bed when I was young? But Granny dotes on me so much." "Quite a few times," Old Ma said. "Granny had never given birth nor had she raised a child before. You peed like a waterfall and cried at night, cried when you were hungry, cried when you were stuffed, and even cried when you couldn't sleep. Even the cow that was fenced up was driven crazy by you, so it would be weird if Granny wouldn't have been annoyed. Us old geezers were so annoyed that village chief and apothecary had agreed that it would be a good thing to send you away as the village would become more peaceful. The pain in Qin Mu's heart worsened, and he said with a black face, "Grandpa village chief and Grandpa apothecary also wanted to send me away? How did I not know about this?" Cripple smiled. "You were not a year old, so how would you remember? It would have been fine if you had just peed on the bed. But you even shit on it." Mute had originally wanted to send you away to be raised by others, and even included a milking cow to make the offer more tempting for others. Yet you stopped wetting your bed soon, so you weren't sent away. Grandpa Mute also wanted to send me away? Qin Mu was silent for a moment. Luckily, there's still Grandpa Blind and Grandpa Deaf who dote on me. Old Ma said, "Blind indeed doted on you. But after he raised you high up in the air and you peed on his face, he did not say anything after Granny wanted to send you away." Cripple then continued the story. "When you were young, Deaf was the most annoyed by you. You often climbed onto his desk and covered everything in ink. You even peed into his ink stone." He sighed. "Still, you were cute when you wet the bed. You became not so cute when you grew up and peed on the stone statues in the village." Having received many psychological blows, Qin Mu said hoarsely, "Grandpa Ma, Grandpa Cripple, I'm now the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, so can we not mention wetting the bed? Let me take a look at your leg and arm." Cripple smiled at Old Ma. "This incident of him being sent away after wetting the bed always cracks me up. I'm sure I'll laugh until I jump out of the coffin upon remembering it even after I've died." Old Ma revealed a smile. "Me too." Qin Mu walked into the courtyard with a black face and moved the medicinal cauldron and furnace in. He checked the arm and leg of the two people and took out Junior Protector Sword to slice an opening on Cripple's leg, taking out a few drops of blood to check him in detail. After a moment, he cut open Old Ma's arm and also took out a few drops of blood. After studying them for a moment, he said, "Even though the life force in Grandpa Ma's arm has been depleted by half, it's been preserved well. It seems like someone used a Buddhist incantation to vibrate the properties of the blood in the arm, keeping the blood fresh. With some nourishment from spirit pills and miracle medicine, the life force can be recovered so the arm could be reattached. After training it for a few years, it would return back to its original state." Old Ma said, "My arm was placed in Thousand Buddha Pagoda where the physical body of previous Rulai rests. Monks chant incantations day and night to preserve the activity of the body." Qin Mu jumped in shock and cried out, "There is really 1,000 Buddhas in Great Thunderclap Monastery?" Old Ma shrugged. "I didn't count them, but there should be." Qin Mu composed himself and checked on Cripple's leg. "Grandpa Cripple, this leg, the blood has already spoiled and the leg has died. It can't be reattached anymore." Cripple's face turned pale white, and the smile on his face vanished as he cried out, "How is that possible? I'm known as the Divine Legs, and these two legs were trained to the realm of God, so how could one just die? Furthermore, it was chopped off just recently, merely some 20-30 years ago. I don't believe my leg is inferior to Old Ma's divine fist. It's definitely still alive." Qin Mu revealed an honest smile. "My condolences, Grandpa Cripple. It's already dead and can't be reattached. Furthermore, I tasted your blood just now, and there was the taste of 5 spices and a smoky flavor to it. I reckon it was turned into a dried leg by Imperial Preceptor." Cripple laughed from extreme anger. "Rascal, fooling me again. How could Imperial Preceptor be so poor to smoke my leg into dried meat?" The moment he said that, he became nervous. Imperial Preceptor is indeed very poor. He wouldn't have turned it into dried meat, right? Qin Mu was pleased with himself. Old Ma said, "Don't scare him. Thieves are timid." Qin Mu smiled. Even though Grandpa Ma's arm and Grandpa Cripple's leg were less active than Grandpa Butcher's lower body, the life force within them is still there. I'll first use medicine to activate your severed limbs, and after 10 days to half a month, they will recover. When they are reattached, there should be no problems. Grandpa Butcher's lower body had been on Grand Shaman's body, so there were no hidden injuries left behind. Yours are not in such a good condition since there was no nourishment from a living body. Old Ma and Cripple let out a sigh of relief. As long as they can be reattached, it's good. Cripple smiled. I took a portion of spirit herbs from the palace's treasury, so you should see which spirit herbs can be used. If you lack any, I'll go and, borrow some more. No need. The warehouse of Imperial College should have the needed herbs. Qin Mu came to the courtyard and was about to check the types of spirit herbs there, when Hu Linger's voice reached him from outside. Young Master, Imperial Preceptor came to visit. Imperial Preceptor is here? Could it be that what Grandpa Cripple did have been traced all the way here? Qin Mu was astonished. He turned around to close the door to the main room. Tidying up his clothes, he opened the gate to see Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor standing outside. This middle-aged man who shook the world with his might was ill at ease. He stood quietly for quite some time before saying slowly, "Imperial Academician is well-to-do. Could you lend me some money?" Qin Mu was bewildered as he smiled. Imperial Preceptor came this time to borrow money? The magnificent Imperial Preceptor actually lacks money? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor answered truthfully. When I went out for battle, a thief came into my house and cleaned everything out. Now my pockets are empty, yet I still have to go to North Garrison King's Manor to offer my condolences. I really don't have any money to spare. Qin Mu's heart was moved slightly. Could Grandpa Cripple have cleaned out Imperial Preceptor's manor and not left him any money? Grandpa Cripple may have lost a leg, but he's still more nimble than me. He smiled. Imperial Preceptor, how much money do you need? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor calculated for a moment and said, My salary is 800 Great Abundance coins a month, so I'll borrow the salary of a month to tide me over. Qin Mu told Hu Linger, fetch 1,000 Great Abundance coins over and pass them to Imperial Preceptor. Hu Linger gave a sound of acknowledgement and slipped into the room. Qin Mu smiled. Is there a need for Imperial Preceptor to be so poor? The man shook his head. Too much external desires would affect one's cultivation and wisdom. With lesser desires, money is of no importance anymore. Suddenly his gaze flickered and he smiled. There are other people in your room. The person is an existence that's like a rulai sitting there motionlessly. That's not right, there should be two people. The other blends with the heaven and earth, drifting without a resting place. It seems like he could escape at any moment. What a superior body technique which almost made me overlook him. Academician, why are you not inviting me in to take a seat? Qin Mu shook his head. Imperial Preceptor, I'm not going to invite you in. My elders have come, and they are injured, so it isn't convenient for them to meet people. Oh, so they're injured, that explains why there are so many spirit herbs in the courtyard. I'm also injured, therefore it's indeed inconvenient to disturb them. Hu Linger brought a huge coin pouch over, and Qin Mu took it from her, handing it to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor with a smile. If Imperial Preceptor is tight on money, there's no need to return. Imperial Preceptor, a person of noble character can be poor, but there's no need to be poor. Being poor is not a requirement to be a noble person. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, I have to return. The Emperor's reward will come in a few days, and I'll be able to pay you back then. I just need this to tide me over the next few days. He expressed his thanks and bade farewell. Qin Mu waited until he walked farther away before telling Hu Linger and the Dragon Qilin to guard outside again. He walked into the main room and asked, Grandpa Cripple, you cleaned out Imperial Preceptor's manor? What do you mean by cleaned out? Cripple shook his head. There was not much money in his manor to begin with, and he didn't even have any valuable furniture. The thing worth the most was probably Def's painting, which is priceless. Qin Mu was puzzled. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was really that poor? He was an important minister that had power over all levels of society, so how could he have no capital? There were some officials in Eternal Peace Empire that were compradors in mining. Some set up refineries, casting factories, and had unspeakable wealth. As the Imperial Preceptor, how could he be so poor? Cripple took out a scroll from God knows where and opened it up. This painting of the sword god's back should be a village chief, right? Def should have seen the village chief young Kiki. This painting can't be seen else the eyes will become blind. He rolled back the painting of sword god and threw it at Qin Mu. I'll give it to you, use it to ward off evil. The painting of village chief painted by blind makes it hard for ghosts to come near you. Don't open it. With your cultivation, you'll turn blind if you take a look and might even die. Even though the paintings of death from back then had yet to reach the god realm, the person he had drawn was too powerful, so you still can't see it. Qin Mu was skeptical, but he placed the painting in his Taotai sack. Old Ma said, Deaf had indeed seen village chief before, but it was reverence in him more than anything. In the village, he was closest to Mute. Now that Mute left without saying a thing, I reckon Deaf will be unable to keep still and will definitely come out to find him. Qin Mu was moved. Ever since he left the village, the people of disabled elderly village had come out one after another. Even though these old folks said that they didn't miss him, they had all walked out of the village for him. He concentrated on distinguishing the spirit herbs that Cripple had borrowed from the palace, thinking to himself, the herbs from the palace are indeed precious, but they're a little inferior to the herbs in Grandpa Apothecary's herb garden. These are all hard to get spirit herbs. With them, he already had the prescription to nourish Old Ma's arm and Cripple's divine leg. He just needed to pick some supplementary herbs from the warehouse in Imperial College. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 205. A Tree of Yellow Pears. Qin Mu tidied up the herbs and matched them up. He nourished Old Ma's arm and Cripple's leg with medicine before buying some venomous insect powder of the south from the warehouse of the Imperial College. This insect powder was made of incomparably tiny insects called vermilion beauty venomous insects. If a single insect was placed in front of a person, it was impossible to see with a naked eye, only with the third eye. After the insects were dried and turned into powder, they would revive when in contact with blood. Qin Mu asked for some fresh blood from Old Ma and Cripple and used it to dissolve the insect powder. When vermilion beauty venomous insects received the nourishment of fresh blood, they revived and made it seem as if the two goblets of fresh blood were alive. Old Ma and Cripple looked at the goblets. Their eyesight was extraordinary and could naturally see the insects in the blood. There were tens of thousands of them densely packed in the goblet, and the sight of it was terrifying. Cripple smiled. Moor, you plan to use these insects to cure our limbs? What insects are these? Are they harmful or not? Among the people in the village, Butcher could only claim to be number 2 when ranked on fiendishness that could make little maidens cry. The number 1 was Apothecary, who loved to raise flowers and little insects. Apothecary's face was scary, but his insects were scarier. Cripple was used to stealing stuff and everyone's room had been visited by him. Even Qin Mu's sugar-coated hawthorns were scammed away by him a few times, but he had never touched Apothecary's room. Qin Mu followed Apothecary to learn the art of healing, so he was quite knowledgeable about insects. Looking at the insects in the two goblets, Cripple couldn't help feeling his hair stand on end. He kept having the feeling that a wicked person was trying to harm him. Grandpa Cripple, don't worry. The use of vermilion beauty venomous insects is one of the venomous insect techniques from 5 sprouts of the southern borders. There's no harm to the body. Qin Mu injected the insect blood into the blood vessels of Old Ma's arm and Cripple's leg, and the vermilion beauty venomous insects were now planted into the limbs. He then said, the reason why these insects are called vermilion beauty venomous insects is because there are some women from the sects of the southern borders who use them to freeze their beauty and preserve their youth. They even continue to look alive after they are dead. Looking alive after dying. Cripple gave a shudder, still feeling that these vermilion beauty venomous insects weren't anything good. Qin Mu placed Cripple's leg and Old Ma's arm into the medicinal cauldron. There was already a cauldron of medicinal decoction there, and he said, this kind of venomous insect can eat away the dead blood in the blood, the dead skin on the skin, the mucous membrane when muscles are damaged, broken bones, and dead bone marrow. That's why people who use vermilion beauty venomous insects are able to preserve the appearance of their youth until they die of old age. Grandpa Apothecary said he had a few intimate friends of the fairer sex who raised this kind of venomous insect in their body. Even years later, they still looked 16 to 17 years old and were very tight. Grandpa Apothecary said he likes girls who are very tight. The youth revealed a thoughtful expression. What does girls who are very tight mean? Cripple said, you're still young. Don't think about these nonsensical things. Can I use them? Qin Mu found a seed from the spirit herbs taken from the palace and lifted up a floor tile in the main room, revealing jade-like soil underneath. Of course. However, there's a disadvantage to this kind of venomous insect. If they get hungry, they start eating the healthy flesh and blood, so people who have these venomous insects need to use fresh blood to raise them. As time goes by, there will be more and more vermilion beauty venomous insects in their body, so the fresh blood they have to consume will grow in quantity. He opened his Taoya sack and took out some water from Jade Dragon Palace to water it. Grandpa Apothecary said that in the land of 5 sprouts, it is a frequent occurrence that beautiful women seduce young and strong men. After a night of fun, only the skin of the men would be left, their owners having turned into dissolute ghosts. The essence and blood sucked away from their bodies would have been used by the women to feed their vermilion beauty venomous insects. Cripple shuddered. After Qin Mu watered the soil, it bulged out and a soft shoot popped out, growing taller and taller at a speed visible to the naked eye. The youth executed Overlord Body 3 elixir technique as he continued walking around the tiny sapling in the main room. He then executed Earth Ian creation technique and struck the tiny sapling with madras. The moment his palm and his 5 moving fingers touched the leaf of the sapling, they would immediately get deflected. When the branches and leaves came into contact with his palm or fingers, there were actually ding and dong sounds which were like notes of a guqin. A melodious rhythm rang out in the main room. Qin Mu stepped about, and with his Earth Ian creation technique, the small tree grew to the height of a human and began to sprout, revealing lush green leaves. Next, flower buds grew out and bloomed into snow-white pear blossoms. The reputation of vermilion beauty venomous insect isn't good, so when I went to the warehouse of Imperial College to buy it earlier, the directorate even asked what I wanted to use it for. That directorate said that there are many females in the kings, dukes, and ministers' families that like these kinds of things. There are also some consorts in the palace that like them, so Hall of Supreme Healing had altered these venomous insects so that they couldn't reproduce. Qin Mu's footsteps didn't stop, and neither did his hands. The madra continued to change like Guanyin flicking her fingers. Each flick produced a thump sound of a stone landing into a calm lake. The pear blossoms on the tree withered as green pears grew out. Those pears were small and exquisite, only the size of a thumb. However, under the transformation of Qin Mu's madra, the fruits slowly grew bigger. Imperial Physician, you even created an insect elimination pill, so when the vermilion beauty venomous insects start to harm the body, one can consume this pill to kill the vermilion beauty venomous insects and remove them from their body. Qin Mu transformed his creation technique, continuing to ripen the fruits, and the green pears on the tree became as big as a fist. I had the directorate of the warehouse fetch an insect elimination pill for me to have a look. The herbs used in it are only ordinary herbs, yet they are sold for an exorbitant price. Even Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's month's salary isn't enough to buy one of them. That directorate said that Imperial Physician, you had relied on this pill to become a tycoon among the Imperial Physicians. Cripple's eyes lighted up. Imperial Physician, you? Tycoon. The pears on the tree turned yellow and gave off a fragrant fruity smell. Qin Mu plucked a few and threw them to Old Ma and Cripple. The 2 old men took a bite and the sweetness of the pear spread throughout their mouth, making them exclaim in admiration. What kind of spell did little divine physician use to transform these pears? Old Ma asked. Qin Mu blushed and said, Grandpa Ma, stop making fun of me. This is the Earth Ian creation technique that Granny taught me. Earth Ian creation technique? Old Ma and Cripple looked at each other in dismay, and Cripple muttered, I saw Granny C execute this move to refine the sun before. At the time of noon, the 5 hearts faced upwards to gather the essence of the sun, causing the fire clouds in the sky to come surging over. The sight was so terrifying that it was obvious at first glance that it was a top-notch technique of the devil path. Granny C used this technique to scorch many people to death, which is very unlike how you used it just now. Qin Mu was stunned. Could I have cultivated it wrongly? Old Ma disagreed. You didn't cultivate it wrongly. You had cultivated it purely, while I reckon Old Woman C was the one that had strayed from the path. The sun nourishes all living things, so by right it should be used this way. Qin Mu plucked a few more pears and sliced them into half before placing them in the medicine decoction. I use vermilion beauty venomous insects to get rid of the dead parts in the arm and leg, and after they are gotten rid of, I will use medicine to force the vermilion beauty venomous insects out. The insects won't harm your limbs. This yellow pear is a herb to excite the medicinal energy of other herbs. It's also pretty delicious, but there are little medicinal properties in it. His knowledge in the art of healing even surpassed that of Imperial Physician Yu. This physician had used insect elimination pill to poison vermilion beauty venomous insects, so after they died, they would still remain within the body to be slowly discharged. Qin Mu, however, had used medicine to force these venomous insects to swim out by themselves, not leaving a trace behind. Furthermore, the medicinal decoction he had refined could help improve blood circulation, exciting the activity of Old Ma's arm and Cripple's arm, which would help with the recovery of its life force when the limbs were nursed back to health. He could reattach them back. Qin Mu plucked the other pears and filled up a basket full of them. He then pulled out the pear tree with its roots and moved it to the courtyard. Qin Mu called Hu Linger and the dragon Qilin over, giving some pears to them as well. Hu Linger tasted a mouthful and exclaimed endlessly. The dragon Qilin also ate quite a few of them. Even if these weren't scarlet fire spirit pills, it still ate heartily. It's time for this fellow to lose some fat. Qin Mu stared at this dragon Qilin and thought to himself, if he continues eating like this, I doubt he will be able to fly up while stepping on fire clouds. Cripple couldn't sit still. After staying half a day at Qin Mu's place, he started grumbling about going out for a walk. Old Ma was worried he might meet Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, so he went out with him. The person that Cripple always obeyed was Old Ma. He was respectful and afraid of him, so he could not reject him. Even if the two had run out, Qin Mu wasn't worried about their safety. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was also heavily injured, so if he met Cripple might not be the one at a disadvantage. Furthermore, Old Ma was the most steady person in the village. With Old Ma around, Cripple wouldn't fool around. A few days passed by, and the Imperial scholars that had gone to the front lines returned. In Lizhou, Surging River, and Deer County, they had met with Great Mountain Sect summoning a devil, 9 Spectre Sect summoning souls, and Corpse Immortal Cult controlling corpses. After they received the surprise attack of General Shaoyi, 30% of the Imperial scholars that had headed to the battle were killed. These 30% were the elites of the elites, so they could be said to have suffered a great loss. The Imperial scholars who had gone forth into the darkness had been completely wiped out. Luckily, the main forces of Eternal Peace Empire's army had managed to quell the rebellion in Surging River under the command of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. General Yuan Chuyun had also managed to gather the power of everyone to slay the devil god that was summoned forth and made his way to the gate of the netherworld. Lizhou Prefecture Magistrate Yuan Chuyu had led her army across the river to stop General Shaoyi, and only when both sides of the army launched a bloody battle on the surface of the river that the power of General Shaoyi's army finally came to a halt. The swords of Yuan Chuyu and Yuan Chuyun matched harmoniously as the sun set in Surging River. At that time, a sword sun was half sunk into the heart of the river and numerous sword lights burst forth from the setting sun in the heart of the river, slaying countless people from the rebel army. Flying ships fell from the sky and corpses rained down. General Shaoyi could only retreat. Only when Yuan Chuyu and Yuan Chuyun's armies crossed the river was the chaos in Lizhou quelled. They checked the Imperial scholars after that, and only then did they realize that they had suffered a great loss. There were even some directorates who had died in battle to save the scholars by fighting the devil. After that, numerous scholars had followed the directorates to quell the rebellion. Only when Imperial Preceptor returned to the court did the scholars' experience end, and they returned to Imperial College. They were thus slightly later than Qin Mu. There were many Imperial scholars that had died, and Gu Linhuan couldn't avoid the blame, so he requested his punishment from the Emperor. The Emperor forfeited his salary for half a year and demoted him to a 4th-ranking official. He was still in charge of Imperial College, but he wasn't spared from his duty. Gu Linhuan ordered people to tidy up the casualty list, hoping to see Qin Mu's name there, but was a pity it didn't appear. After tidying up the casualty list, he immediately headed to the palace to meet the Emperor. On his way, He met a eunuch that announced imperial decrees heading towards Imperial College, and Gu Linwan immediately said, "Eunuch, are you going to Imperial College to announce an imperial decree?" That eunuch smiled. "Congratulations, Lord. The Imperial Academician gained merit in quelling this rebellion, which saved the scholars under you. His Majesty wants me to bring the imperial decree to him and raise his official position." Gu Linwan's expression froze, and he said angrily, "This is what he should do. Why is there a need for a reward?" Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 206. Devil Summoner. As a warning? Am I the one being warned? The corners of Gu Linwan's eyes twitched as he felt anxious in his heart. He took out a few great abundance coins and stuffed them into the eunuch's hand before bracing himself on his way to the palace. Just a few steps later, he met another imperial decree eunuch who was also rushing to Imperial College. "Congratulations, Lord Gu." Gu Linwan asked absent-mindedly, "Eunuch, what joy is there?" "Lord Gu might not know, but the Imperial Academician of your Imperial College gained merit in quelling the rebellion, so His Majesty sent me to bestow a reward, promoting him." Gu Linwan was shocked and cried out, "Another promotion? There was a eunuch just now who was going to promote him. Why is he getting promoted twice in a row?" The Imperial Decree eunuch said, "His Majesty said that the first one was because others didn't do what they were supposed to do and Imperial Academician had done what he was supposed to do, therefore he wanted to promote him to upper 6th ranking. Whereas this time, Imperial Academician had contributed to the quelling of the rebellion and did a great merit at the southern border, so he's being promoted again to the lower 5th ranking." Gu Linwan took out a few great abundance coins and stuffed them into the eunuch's hand secretly before muttering, "Oh, so it was his contribution. Imperial Academician is the academician of our Imperial College. For him to be rewarded for his contribution, I'm also honored." "That's right." The Imperial Decree eunuch was all beaming smiles as he hurried away. Gu Linwan continued walking towards the palace with his thoughts wandering when he met another Imperial Decree eunuch. When the eunuch saw him, he was full of smiles. "Congratulations, Lord Gu." "Congratulations," Gu Linwan asked with a black face. "Eunuch, what joy is there?" "His Majesty made me bring the decree to promote Imperial Academician." The old eunuch then continued, "Imperial Academician Qin Mu treated the injuries of Imperial Preceptor. Therefore he is promoted to upper 5th ranking Palace Grandee, receiving the same treatment as the directorates, getting promoted 3 times in a day. This is a great joy for your Imperial College." Gu Linwan nodded emotionlessly and took out a few great abundance coins to stuff them into that old eunuch's hand without anyone knowing. He gave a forced smile and said, "I'm honored as well." When the eunuch had walked away, Gu Linwan's face turned entirely black. With Qin Mu being promoted and he demoted, he would be on the same level as him in no time. Gu Linwan even had to spend quite a sum of money due to the other being promoted 3 times in a row. If he continues to get promoted, I'll be the one who has to call him Lord. Gu Linwan composed himself and went to see the Emperor to hand over the list of casualties. Emperor Yanfeng was currently reading his memorials, and upon Gu Linwan's entrance, he raised his head to take the list. After taking a look at, he said with pain in his heart, "These scholars were all my talents, the future pillars of the empire. Just because the news got leaked, they were harmed by the scums. I want to kill." Cold sweats broke out on Gu Linwan's forehead. He didn't dare say a word as he didn't know if the emperor would want to kill him as well if he interrupted. Emperor Yanfeng stood up and walked to and fro. He suddenly slammed the table and asked bitterly, "I had only passed down the imperial decree about the location of the scholar's experience on the point of departure, so how did they get ambushed?" Gu Linwan, Minister Gu, tell me your opinion. Who was the one that leaked the news? Gu Linwan muttered to himself irresolutely. Looking at the situation of the battle in Lizhou Prefecture Magistrate had already invaded Deer County. When the directorates and scholars arrived at Lizhou, the rebels executed Soul Guide precisely. This means the rebels knew the exact time when the scholars would reach Lizhou, as if they had a premonition. They should have received the news of the scholars coming forward for an experience, which was why they still had the power to summon the devil and many souls even after invading Deer County. This means it wasn't the directorates or the scholars who had leaked the news, and he braced himself to continue. And it was me or the other first-ranking high officials who had leaked the news. The traitor is right among us. Emperor Yanfeng sneered. Seems like there are some people among us who want me to shift my butt, give the throne to them. Other than you and me, those that had come forth that day for discussion and knew about this matter were all first-ranking high officials, the teachers of the Crown Prince, as well as Situ, Sikong, and Duke. Who do you think is the traitor among them? Huge beads of sweat rolled down Gu Linwan's forehead as he gritted his teeth and didn't say a word. Emperor Yanfeng gave him a glance and snorted coldly. You don't dare to say? Seems like you aren't loyal to me. Cold sweat poured down Gu Linwan's forehead. This minister has been frozen in great ruins for over 200 years, so I'm not familiar with the ministers of the imperial court. Therefore, I don't dare to speak. Just speak whatever is on your mind. I'll pardon you. I'm naturally slow-witted and very dumb. My junior protector sword even got scammed away by the imperial academician, which shows how dumb I am. Emperor Yanfeng smiled with extreme anger and pointed at his nose. Stop beating around the bush. Imperial academician scammed your sword, but you could have lowered your head and apologized to him to ask for it back. If you are dumb, what need is there for you to be the Grand Chancellor? You can just pack your things up and scram. Tell me, who do you suspect? Gu Linwan gritted his teeth and raised his head. A few of Crown Prince's teachers are suspicious. What did you say? Emperor Yanfeng was unable to restrain his anger, and his emperors might burst forth, pressuring Gu Linwan to lower his head. Suddenly, Emperor Yanfeng turned decrepit and waved his hand. Minister Gu, you're very smart, very smart. Fall back. Gu Linwan was covered in cold sweat as he slowly fell back. Come back, Emperor Yanfeng said. Gu Linwan's hair stood on end, and he braced himself for the walk back. Emperor Yanfeng said slowly, This time Imperial Preceptor did a huge contribution, and I have yet to reward him. What do you think I should reward him with? Gu Linwan lowered his head. What can the Emperor reward him with? Emperor Yanfeng shook his head. Nothing else. Gu Linwan thought for a while and said, Then reward Imperial Preceptor with beautiful women and money. You have the same idea as me. Emperor Yanfeng sighed. I'm just afraid he will reject them like he always does. Gu Linwan hesitated before saying, Many things happen this time. If Imperial Preceptor is really clever, he will definitely accept. Emperor Yanfeng was stunned. Then he smiled. You're also a clever person. I'm not warning you, and you have no need to be warned. Fall back. Also, don't keep messing with Imperial Academician. You can't mess with him, his power is beyond your imagination. Every time you give him trouble, I'm embarrassed for you. You're someone I placed in an important position despite everyone being against it. I don't want to keep cleaning up after your messes. Gu Linwan felt ashamed as he fell back and thought to himself, I can't mess with him? I can't mess with him? A big shot in the Devil Path, one of the few important figures of the Devil Path, can't mess with a brat of 5 elements realm? Have I lived the past few hundred years for naught? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor went back to reading his memorials, then suddenly placed his vermilion brush down, falling into a daze. I had sat down on this seat when I was middle-aged, while some other sons had even died from the long wait. It looks like my Crown Prince doesn't want to be like me and wait on the seat of the Crown Prince for too long. In Imperial College, Qin Mu received 3 imperial decrees, and his official position was raised to upper 5th ranking Palace Grandee. Palace Grandee was a welfare position and held no real power. People in it were civil officials of the empire in a way, but they were still wanderers. It was obvious that the emperor still had some doubts since Qin Mu was the master of heavenly devil cult. The emperor wouldn't give him real power so that all levels of society wouldn't be filled with villains from the devil cult. Qin Mu threw the 3 imperial decrees into the west room, greatly startled. He was still cultivating the other 4 transformations in 5 elements realm. When heading to the south to quell the rebellion, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had given them many pointers, so when Chen Wanyun, Si Yunxiang, and the rest returned from the southern border, They immediately headed to floor of heavenly records to look for 5-element realms techniques. Si Yunxiang even borrowed the Imperial Academician's book tablet from Qin Mu to enter the third floor of heavenly records to browse through the techniques. Qin Mu took in and sent out the star force of Saturn, and his body gradually transformed. His legs fused into one and turned into the tail of a snake. With a human head and snake body, he was almost 10 yards tall. At the same time, 2 tightly shut gates appeared behind him. During the journey to the south, he had already managed to cultivate the god transformation of Mercury Sovereign, Mars Sovereign, Jupiter Sovereign, and Venus Sovereign. It was only the form of Saturn Sovereign that he found hard to cultivate. No matter how dense his vital chi was, he couldn't form the most perfect form of Saturn Sovereign. When he executed Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique this time, the tightly shut gate behind him gradually became clearer. Yet the words on it were still blurry, and he was unable to make them out. Saturn Sovereign was extremely special among the 5-element star sovereigns. Saturn Earth Marquee technique was the head of the 5 elements and was unexpectedly hard to cultivate, especially the gate behind Saturn Sovereign. Qin Mu was able to transform into the form of Saturn Sovereign, but the gate behind him never fully materialized. The words on it were always blurry. From the sky, an earth yellow light poured down continuously into his body. The star force of the earth element surged forth and stabilized the body of his god transformation. Gradually, Qin Mu discovered that the form of Saturn Sovereign still had more to its transformation. An apparition of a scroll appeared in his hands. When he looked at the apparition of the scroll, the writing on it was still blurry. However, from the peculiar lines there, the writing on the scroll should be tadpole script. It looked like sun, moon, insect, and fish, which was different from the writing of the modern day. Qin Mu had learned from Def, this great scholar, for close to 10 years. Def had extremely deep knowledge regarding ancient texts, but he had never taught Qin Mu about this kind of tadpole script. Qin Mu turned his head and looked at the writings on the apparition of the gate. Even though they were still blurry, he could see the similarity between the writing on the scroll and the gate. What kind of text is this? Qin Mu could faintly feel that something was weird. If every martial arts practitioner of 5 elements realm had such a gate behind their back and a scroll in the hands of their Saturn Sovereign form, there would have definitely been someone who had studied the writings on the gate and scroll thoroughly and analyzed their profound meaning. So why hadn't Imperial Preceptor mentioned anything about it? Could it be that other people's Saturn Sovereign form had no gate nor scroll? While Qin Mu was thinking, a deep devilish voice rang out in his mind. Stop letting your imagination run wild. These are Yudu's writings. How would a weakling like you recognize the writings of Yudu? Qin Mu's hair stood up on end, and he said in a panic, Who? Who is talking in my body? Acting? The voice laughed. How long are you still going to act in front of me? When I borrowed your eyes to look at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's battle, didn't you recognize me then? Summoner of the Ruler of Dutian. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 207. Clever as the Devil. Now Qin Mu really felt a bone-chilling cold. When Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had a huge battle at Daxiang City, he stood at the mountain peak to observe the battle, but he was unable to see the moves of the strong practitioners. Dutian Devil King then borrowed his eyes to observe the battle, which allowed him to see the moves of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, Teacher Poor, and the rest clearly. He could even comprehend the marvel of their terrifying moves. However, Qin Mu had thought he had concealed it pretty well and didn't alert this Devil King. Yet now it showed up that his little thoughts had been completely useless. Dutian Devil King had long detected the turbulence in his heart and guessed what he was thinking. Foolish Devil Summoner. It's completely useless to play those tricks that you think are clever in front of the great ruler of Dutian. Dutian Devil King's voice rang in his mind, leaving his ears buzzing from the vibration. It's best for a weakling like you to not play tricks in front of me. You can't imagine how strong I am. Serve me. Worship me. That's your only way to survive. Qin Mu composed himself and suddenly smiled. Great leader of Dutian. I'm the only person left in this world that still understands ghost transferring God dispatching runes command. I'm also the only one who can still execute this spell. Dutian Devil King fell silent. After a moment, his voice rang out again. Interesting brat, you actually dared to haggle with me. Very well, very well. Qin Mu felt uneasy, uncertain if he would succeed in this haggle. If he didn't succeed and this devil fell out with him, he was most likely going to be in trouble. If he succeeded and kept himself alive, he could ask village chief and the rest to slowly kill Dutian Devil King when he returned to the village. From Dutian Devil King's actions, it was clearly still possible to kill him. After all, when Qin Mu and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had gone on a journey together, Dutian Devil King hadn't made a move and hid quietly in Qin Mu's body. Only when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was fighting with the cult master level existences like Teacher Poor did Dutian Devil King dared to borrow Qin Mu's eyes to observe the situation of the battle. He did that to find out Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's true power and also to look for his weakness. However, Qin Mu was surrounded with experts of Heavenly Devil Cult back then, so he didn't make a sound. After that, when Qin Mu was treating Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, Dutian Devil King had also been silent. Once Qin Mu parted ways with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, he had met Cripple and Old Ma in Imperial College, so Dutian Devil King also didn't come out. Now that Old Ma and Cripple were no longer around and Qin Mu was alone, he had finally appeared. If Imperial Preceptor, Old Ma, and Cripple couldn't threaten him, there would have been no need for him to be so careful. In other words, he made a blunder. This meant that he could be vanquished, unlike Li Tianxing in Granny C's Dao Heart, which couldn't be killed at all. As long as one was strong enough, the devil could still be eliminated. Dutian is already finished, with only endless darkness left. That's why I need to find a new world for the people of my Dutian, a place where they can live and flourish. Dutian Devil King's voice traveled over. I took great pains to pass Ghost Transferring God Dispatching Runes command to this world, and now, you are the only one left who knows the spell. You should know I won't let you go so easily. Qin Mu was now completely at ease and let out a sigh of relief. So you want me to summon the devil again? To summon you over? Dutian Devil King explained patiently. I had this idea in the past, but I see that there are powerful beings in this world as well, so I would only like to borrow your hand to send some people here. I don't want to raise a war between the strong practitioners of both worlds. It isn't good for you, nor is it good for us. My Dutian is already finished, and I just don't want my race to be exterminated. I have no notion to take over this world. Believe? Ghost. Qin Mu thought to himself. However, he couldn't say it out loud. If he said it, it would be easy for Dutian Devil King to kill him. With his consciousness leeching off Qin Mu's body, he has some magic power. This power of the devil was far superior to Qin Mu's own. If Dutian Devil King was to fall out with him, this consciousness and magic power would probably not find it a chore to get rid of him. The Devil King had a use for him, so he wouldn't lay his hands on him, but if he discovered that Qin Mu had no intention of summoning him, he would probably fall out with him. You don't need to summon me, just summon my subjects, Dutian Devil King said. After that, I will leave you and you can live your life carefreely. You just need to help me with this little thing, and I'll explain to you the words on the gate. Qin Mu smiled. My elder will most likely recognize the words on the gate, so there's no need to trouble the Devil King. Kiki, recognize? Those are the words of Yudu. Even if he recognizes them, will you be able to read them? Dutian Devil King then added unhurriedly. There's no use if you can't read the words of Yudu. The scroll also records the spells of Yudu. Don't you want to know them? Qin Mu's gaze wavered. What use is there to learn the words of Yudu when I can't even read the words on the scroll or the gate? Furthermore, it doesn't affect me much even if I don't learn them. Devil King, I have no need to make a deal with you. Ha ha ha. Dutian Devil King laughed. It seems like you still haven't comprehended the true marvel of the realm you're in. As long as you learn the words of Yudu, you will be stronger than Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Didn't Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor say that others were a triangle while he's a straight line? As long as you learn the words on the gate, your straight line will be even longer than his. His voice reverberated all around Qin Mu's mind, without any fixed position. It sometimes came from the left and sometimes from the right, while at other times it rang out from the front and sometimes from the back of the head, making Qin Mu unable to discern where it was coming from. A weakling like you probably doesn't know what Yudu is. Let me tell you. Yudu is the final destination after you mortals die. All souls will enter there, the land where the great Earth Count resides, ruling over the world where all the living things go after they die. He's an incomparably ancient god, the primitive god who controls death. Even gods and Buddhas become enslaved by him once they die. Yudu is not the hell the gods and Buddhas had mentioned. Hell is used to scare you mortals, while Yudu is 100 times crueler than hell. By mastering Yudu's words and Yudu's spells, you would strengthen your soul, and this is the stairs to becoming a god. Qin Mu was greatly moved and smiled. There's no proof with just words, and what you said is too good to be true. Tell me a spell from Yudu and I'll believe you. Dutian Devil King chuckled. You should know. Qin Mu was stunned for a moment and cried out, Soul Guide? Soul Guide is a spell from Yudu. Soul Guide isn't a complete spell from Yudu. Instead, it was a Yudu spell that was reconstructed by the mortals of your world using the language of mortals. It's far from the true power of a Yudu spell. Dutian Devil King said, the true Yudu spell uses the words of Yudu, and those words are much more complicated than the runes of your world. Your runes are merely simplified words of Yudu. Qin Mu's heart trembled as he looked at the apparition of the scroll. The words on the scroll were written using Yudu's language. Soul Guide could allow the souls of the dead to return. But if one was proficient in Yudu's language and used it to execute the spell, how powerful would the spell become? There was still one more point. Dutian Devil King said that the words of Yudu must be read to be able to master and execute them. This sentence was not a lie. Back then, on the surface of Surging River, the Taoist from Nine Spectres sect had used Soul Guide and sung a cryptic folk song. This made the black fog pour forward, and a terrifying gate of darkness had appeared in the heart of the river. Most of Dutian Devil King's words were lies, but there were still some truths in them. Devil King, I had once seen an elder beside the river at night guiding the dead. Someone told me that elder was a messenger of death. How is this messenger of death related to Yudu? Qin Mu asked after recalling the incident. Dutian Devil King answered, just a messenger god under Earth Count to maintain the order. Do you want to learn the language of Yudu or not? Learn. Qin Mu blinked his eyes innocently and said, teach me quickly. Dutian Devil King chuckled. After you summon the devils and bring forth my subjects, I'll teach you. Qin Mu hesitated for a moment. If you don't keep your promise after I summon them, won't I be at a disadvantage? How about this? I shall create a wooden mechanism which you can enter. You can then summon your own devil and the others. You will be able to teach me Yudu's language and summon the subjects yourself. Wouldn't that be to everyone's delight and satisfaction? Dutian Devil King sneered. It's a great suggestion, but after I leave your body, you will be able to call people to come and kill me the next moment. Do you think I'm that stupid? I'll remain in your body, and you shall hold the great sacrifice to summon the devils. After you summon them, I'll teach you the language of Yudu. Qin Mu sneered. What happens if you don't teach me after I summon your subjects? If your subjects kill me in a flash, you'll be free. On the other hand, I'll drop dead and my soul will belong to Yudu. Don't forget, when I summoned you last time, you didn't even care if I died or not. Both of them became silent. After a moment, Dutian Devil King smiled. Little brat, clever like the devil, not that easy to fool. How about this? I shall sign an oath of alliance with you. You will summon my subjects and I'll teach you the language of Yudu. Those who will go against the oath will have their souls taken away by the Earth Count. What do you think? Qin Mu thought for a moment and said, all right, but don't try to fool me. I understand some devil language, so don't try to play any tricks on the oath. Dutian Devil King smiled. Filthy brat, clever as the devil. All right, I'll be generous for once and not play any tricks. Cryptic devil language rang out in Qin Mu's mind. The words he heard were hard to pronounce and difficult to understand. Qin Mu was only able to understand half of it, and his heart thumped wildly. Steady, steady. I can't let this Devil King know that I'm half-baked. Not much later, Duqian Devil King read out the Oath of Alliance, and the shape of half a gate gradually appeared in Qin Mu's mind. It seemed to be half of the gate of Yudu. "It's your turn," Duqian Devil King said. Qin Mu composed himself and slowly worked on the meaning of the other half of the devil language that he hadn't understood at first. Yet Duqian Devil King grew impatient and urged him, "Quickly, or else the gate of Yudu is going to vanish." Qin Mu sneered, "You are trying to trick me. I'm not agreeing to this oath." Duqian Devil King smiled. "Little brat, you really understand some of the devil language." Half of the gate of Yudu dispersed and the devil language sounded out again. This time Qin Mu managed to understand most of it, but there were still some terms he was not sure of and had to work to figure out. Duqian Devil King smiled. All right, I see you have the ability." After this, the gate dispersed again, and he redid the oath using the devil language. Qin Mu suddenly smiled. "Devil King, you're always trying to trick me. Why don't we use the language of the humans to conclude the oath? What do you think?" Duqian Devil King kept quiet for a moment, then scolded him for being as clever as the devil. "Stinky brat, you only have a smattering of devil language and took this chance to learn something, didn't you?" Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 208. Earth Counts 9 Packs. If one could understand 40 to 50% of a language, the rest which they didn't understand would become like a ciphertext. According to the words said in front and behind, one could be able to guess the meaning of those coded words. This was what Qin Mu had done. He originally knew nothing about the devil language, but because of fate, he had heard the devil language at Goddess Pass in Great Ruins and memorized it. After that, he had met a devil god who was sealed in the wall in Doom Suppression Palace who taught him Great Freedom Madra, so he learned a bit more of the devil language. With this knowledge, he could deduce what was being said. It was like deciphering a ciphertext. In the oath Duqian Devil King had made 3 times, there were numerous devil language words, and they were extremely pure. Qin Mu knew since a long time ago that the language of gods and devils contained a terrifying might. While listening to the 3 times Duqian Devil King made his oath, Qin Mu mastered the devil language to an astonishing degree. If Duqian Devil King now made an oath with him in human language, he could use it to compare to what was said before and learn the words of the devil language he hadn't understood before. It wasn't wrong of Duqian Devil King to say that he had taken the chance to learn. Now it wasn't too hard for Qin Mu to converse with Duqian Devil King in devil language, but to be on the safe side, he felt that it was still better to use the human language. He could then completely understand the meaning of the sentences so that he wouldn't get tricked by Duqian Devil King. Qin Mu's gaze flickered. In that case, does Devil King still want to make an oath? Duqian Devil King sneered. Yes, naturally yes. He knew Qin Mu planned to take this chance to master the devil language completely, but he could do nothing about it. The only other option was to kill Qin Mu, but if he did that, he would disappear as well. He was just a consciousness and magic power. Spirits of the deceased come back. Earth counts 9 packs. We submit ourselves to you. Duqian Devil King's voice sounded out and called Earth Count's taboo name to rouse the attention of this ruler of Yudu. This time he used the human language, so he had no way to play any tricks. Qin Mu carefully noted the meaning of each and every word. He was very careful and studied them over and over again. In time, he felt an indescribable energy surging forth from a deep space. This energy became stronger and stronger, forming half a gate in his mind. Duqian Devil King completed the oath and looked at Qin Mu. Qin Mu became even more confident in his devil language after comparing the oath's words in both languages. Only then did he speak the oath as well, and when he reached the part where it said "We submit ourselves to you," he could feel a pair of eyes landing on his body. To be exact, they landed on his soul. His soul shuddered as he felt a limitless power and the immensity of the one who controls the souls. This was an existence who controlled all the souls and held boundless power. He had no interest in the corporeal body, just the soul. If one violated the oath, he would descend and take away the soul of the violator. Qin Mu continued to speak out the Oath of Alliance, and half a gate gradually appeared in front of his eyes. This gate matched the half of Duqian Devil King's, forming a complete gate. Beyond it, there was endless darkness. However, below the gate, Qin Mu saw a yellow spring, although it probably shouldn't be called that. It was a bright and dazzling stream that had 9 bends and 18 curves which grew thicker and thicker towards the bottom, looking like the river of heaven. At the bottom of the endless yellow spring, he saw an emotionless gaze. This bright golden stream wasn't the yellow springs but horns. These were the 2 horns on the head of Earth Count, the controller of souls. Earth Count's 9 packs held of the meaning of the 9 bends. 9 packs were 9 bends. His horns were the 9 bends, the yellow spring. Qin Mu and Dutian Devil King had made an oath, and it was formed on the 9 bends of the horns of this majestic primitive god. Why was violating the oath called breaking a pact? It should be related to Earth Count's 9 packs. The Oath of Alliance was formed on the 9 bends of the yellow spring, so if one violated the oath, Earth Count would take away their soul. When the Oath of Alliance was finished, the gate closed and the vision in front of Qin Mu's eyes vanished. Hee hee. Dutian Devil King's laugh rang out, and Qin Mu was bewildered. What's Devil King laughing about? Nothing much. Dutian Devil King laughed non-stop, but he still couldn't resist saying it out loud while chuckling. Brat, even though you're as clever as a devil, you still fell into my trap. You made an oath with me and not my true body. I'm only a consciousness, and you made an oath with it. Now you better work for me sincerely. As for the words of Yudu, don't think that I'll tell you anything about them. This consciousness of mine can just be eliminated. I don't care. Qin Mu stared with his eyes wide open, unable to return to his senses for quite a while. Dutian Devil laughed long and loud and was very pleased with himself as he admired Qin Mu's helpless figure. After a moment, Qin Mu let out a breath and muttered, "No wonder Grandpa Cripple always told me to treat others with a smile and stab them in the back at the same time. Devil King, you're really a professional. Luckily, I'm not bad as well." Dutian Devil King's heart tightened. Qin Mu muttered to himself, "I've also a trick up my sleeve. I decided to kill your subjects wave after summoning them. This won't be seen as breaking the pact." Dutian Devil King was startled. Both of them fell silent. After a moment, Dutian Devil King said, "We're only harmful to each other like this. Since you don't believe me, there's no need to continue living in your body. I'll choose the second option. You will create a mechanism and I'll leave your body to leech onto the god statue. Don't worry. I'll teach you the language of Yudu after you finish building the god statue mechanism." Deal. Qin Mu was exhilarated. Old Ma frequently forged all kinds of furniture, and he had learned quite some handicraft from him. Including the path of painting and calligraphy he learned from deaf and smelting he had learned from mute. It wasn't that troublesome for him to create a god statue mechanism. Qin Mu was about to start working on it when he felt a chill down his spine and cold sweat rolled down his forehead. I almost got tricked by him. Before making the god statue mechanism for him, I have to summon the devils to complete the oath. Otherwise, if I only concentrate on creating the god statue mechanism, and he teaches the language of Yudu to me without me summoning the devils, I'll be violating the oath and my soul will be taken away by Earth Count. Dutian Devil King exclaimed in admiration. You're pretty good. If you came to my Dutian, you could survive there with your wits. Qin Mu let out a breath. If he wasn't careful when dealing with an existence like Dutian Devil King, even his bone marrows might be devoured by him. He went to the west room to get some money, preparing to buy some winter crystal iron and wood to sculpt the god statue. However, he saw Hu Linger standing at the door, looking around. Qin Mu smiled. Linger, why aren't you cultivating but standing around here? Hu Linger said with worry. Imperial Preceptor still owes us 1,000 great abundance coins. It's time for him to repay. Qin Mu shook his head and went to the warehouse to get some materials, moving them to the courtyard. Sculpting a god statue wasn't hard for him. In just half a day, he had sculpted 5 different kinds of wooden statue under the guidance of Dutian Devil King. They were all sculptures of devil gods. These 5 fellows are those that don't accept my rule. It's a treat to me if you summon them over to kill them. Dutian Devil King smiled. When Qin Mu finished sculpting the wooden statues, he cooked dishes and called Hu Linger, who was still at the door, to eat. She came over with a blank expression, and when she ate halfway, she suddenly muttered in a daze, Young master, Imperial Preceptor still owes us 1,000 coins. Qin Mu took out a smelting furnace which he had stolen from Roland's Golden Palace to smelt winter crystal irons to forge the parts which were needed in making the god statue mechanism. While he worked busily until midnight, the scholars living around him couldn't sleep from the ruckus he was creating and complained to the directorates. A few directorates came forth personally and asked him politely to stop. Qin Mu could only do as they told him and went to sleep. On the second day, he opened the room's door and washed up, yet he kept feeling that something was missing. After thinking for a while, he finally remembered that there was something missing under the blanket when he was sleeping yesterday. It seems like Linger didn't tunnel under my blanket to sleep last night. Qin Mu pushed open the gate to the courtyard and saw Hu Linger standing at the head of the dragon Qilin, who was outside. She was looking at the entrance to Scholar's residence and her eyes were red, which showed that she hadn't slept the whole night. Young master, Imperial Preceptor still owes us 1,000 great abundance coins, she said with disappointment. Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He carried her up and tucked her away under the blanket before continuing to forge the god statue mechanism. When it came to the third day, Hu Linger was still standing guard at the gate. The little fox only weekly came back at night for dinner, sitting there in a daze for a long while. Imperial Preceptor still owes us 1,000 great abundance coins. When the fourth day came, Hu Linger didn't say anything and didn't go to the door to wait. She had an unhappy expression on her face. Qin Mu asked with concern what was wrong, and she said, "I guess Imperial Preceptor really won't return the money." Qin Mu finally finished creating the god statue mechanism. It had 4 heads and 8 arms, and every joint in the body could move freely. All kinds of totem markings were imprinted on the body, yet Qin Mu didn't let Duqian Devil King enter it immediately. At this moment, knocking sounds came from outside, and Qin Mu took a glance at Hu Linger. He saw that the little fox was still in a daze and didn't go to open the door. He couldn't help shaking his head and went to open the door himself. An elder stood in front of the door. His clothes were old, but they were very clean. He smiled. "Is this young Master Qin Mu? I'm the butler of Imperial Preceptor's Manor and my surname is Fu. I have come under the orders of Imperial Preceptor to return the money." Qin Mu was astonished. "Elder Fu, the rewards from the Emperor have come?" Elder Fu said, "That's right, they arrived. The Emperor rewarded Imperial Preceptor with 100 palace maids and 1,000,000 gold. Imperial Preceptor accepted these gifts, but the 100 palace maids are giving him a headache. He can't support all of them, but luckily there's some money now. However, after returning all the debts, I reckon only half of it will be left. Young Master Qin, here's the 1,000 coins." Qin Mu wanted to call Hu Linger over when he saw a flash of white light streak across his eyes. Hu Linger rushed over as if she was flying and snatched the coin pouch from Elder Fu's hands with a sweet smile. "Seems like Imperial Preceptor is a person of credibility. Thanks for the trouble, Elder Fu." Elder Fu was astonished and didn't say anything. He then warned Qin Mu, "Young Master Qin is wealthy, so you must be careful. Recently there's been a thief running amok in the capital city. Many rich officials have been robbed. The worst was Imperial Physician Yu. He cried in bed for so many days. There were also a few high officials who were robbed and didn't dare to say anything because they had lost too many treasures. Only their servants are discussing it." As he was talking about it, 2 elders walked into Scholar's residence while wearing brightly colored clothes and pieces of gold and silver jewelry, looking very extravagant. One of them was a cripple while the other looked like a middle-aged householder. They both seemed rich and imposing. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 209, Gate of Earth Origin. Elder Fu saw the situation and said, "You have visitors, so I won't disturb you any longer. I still have to go return the money to the others' families. 2 of them had too much stolen, so if I don't return money to them, they will probably have to starve from today onwards." Cripple and Old Ma walked over. The former's face was glowing radiantly, while the latter had an air about him that said wealth meant nothing to him. Qin Mu invited both of them over and said, "Where did Grandpa Cripple and Grandpa Ma go these few days?" Old Ma said, Cripple tagged along with me to Liz Ho, sending disaster relief. Cripple smiled. Over there at Liz Ho, the rebellion caused chaos and destruction, resulting in starving people everywhere. Old Ma and I earned quite a bit of money, so we sent disaster relief there. Don't look at how we are wearing bright and neat clothes. These are all fake. This golden chain is wood that's gold-plated, and even this jade pendant is also fake. The real ones had been pawned off by Old Ma in exchange for rice and noodles, which were sent to Liz Ho. The fellows from your heavenly devil cult are also there, helping everyone, so we handed the money for the rations to them as well. Qin Mu smiled. In that case, Imperial Physician, you actually did a good deed. When he mentioned the devil summoning to the two elders, Cripple asked with interest. That actually happened. You didn't throw my face and got scammed by that devil king, did you? You should let Old Ma handle this. Ma Wangshan has 3 eyes and he's the best at subduing devils. The heart of Old Ma's brows suddenly split open and revealed a white flesh ball. It turned half around towards the side and revealed an eye that shone bright Buddha light onto the center of Qin Mu's brows. Screeching cries came from there, and a voice shouted in misery. If you refine me to death, you're going to die too. Qin Mu immediately said, Old Ma, I made an oath of alliance with him. We have a pact of earth count. Pact of earth count? Cripple and Old Ma's hearts shook slightly. Old Ma immediately shut the 3rd eye on his forehead and said with a solemn expression, Muer, you are too gutsy. Do you know how treacherous is pact of earth count? How can you sign this kind of oath with other people? Furthermore, the other person is not even a human but a devil god from another world. Cripple shook his head. How reckless. You're playing around with your life. Why did you have to make a pact of earth count with him? You just needed to tell us and we could have gotten rid of him. Qin Mu said, I wanted to learn the language of Yudu. There was no need for a pact of earth count for that. Should have handed him over to Butcher, who would have definitely treated him with sincerity until he spilled everything in 3 to 5 days. Cripple shook his head. Butcher loves to play with gods and devils. He can make them desire death after barely 3 to 5 days. Let Butcher deal with him. If he doesn't die, I'll teach you. Qin Mu said with a blush on his face. The pact of earth count is already made and can't be changed anymore. I'm going to prepare to summon the devils now, and I'll have to trouble grandpas to help me. Old Ma said, Feel free to summon them, we'll just get rid of them. Qin Mu went to the warehouse of Imperial College to buy some bones. He took out his talisman treasure and started to summon the devils. Imperial College taught all kinds of techniques and spells, so no matter if it was the righteous path, devil path, or the Buddha path, there were some spells that required human bones to cultivate, so there were always some in the warehouse. The summoning went smoothly, and soon the runes on the devil god sculpture lighted up. This time, there was no terrifying sight like what had happened in Heaven Wave City. The lack of it made it obvious that the devil god he was summoning now wasn't as strong as Dutian Devil King. In the sky above Imperial College, the astronomical phenomenon changed as majestic magic power broke through the sky and descended. It was like a black pillar crashing straight onto the scholar's residence. At this moment, countless directorates and scholars in Imperial College were alarmed, and even the Grand Chancellor was no exception. The strong practitioners in the capital city also looked over with anxiousness. Meanwhile, in Qin Mu's courtyard, the devil summoning was still on the way. Crackling sounds came from the wooden sculpture of the devil god, and it grew taller and bigger. Qin Mu heard a devilish voice growling, This petty and lowly world, prepare to welcome the wrath of Kaya-he devil god from Dutyen. At this moment, Buddha's aura shone brightly in the sky above Imperial College. A huge Buddha sat down in the sky and opened up his palm that was over a hectare large. The palm pressed down, making a crackling sound. Before the consciousness and magic power of this Kaya-he devil god could descend, he was shattered along with the expanding wood. Most of the directorates and scholars in Imperial College were shocked again. When the strong practitioners and guards of the capital city saw this, they calmed down. It's the Imperial College after all. There are always experts there. This level of cultivation in Buddhism is even rare in Great Thunderclap Monastery. For Imperial College to have such an expert, they can't be underestimated. Gu Linhuan brought a few directorates of Imperial College and rushed to the place of incident. Qin Mu popped his head out from the courtyard and smiled. Everyone came just at the right time. There a devil god had just jumped out, but he was beaten to death by my elder. Gu Linhuan's heart leaped, and he gave a smile that was not a smile. Be careful, Lord Qin. Don't destroy our scholar's residence. All right, everyone, disperse. With Lord Qin's elder here, there will be no problems in Imperial College. The directorates looked at one another in dismay. Gu Linhuan always couldn't get along with Qin Mu, so why was he so easygoing now? This situation was clearly Lord Qin summoning the devil. So why isn't Gu Linhuan causing trouble for him? Everyone was bewildered. Summoning a devil in the capital city is a death crime. Why is Grand Chancellor letting it be? Gu Linhuan left first, with cold sweat rolling down his forehead. His elder is here. Was it the blind man who had raised the river or the cripple that had stolen my sheath? Or could it be the half-bodied fiendish old man? No wonder His Majesty said I can't mess with him. I really can't mess with him. These fiendish people actually dare to walk out of great ruins. The capital is no longer peaceful. Any devils and monsters can actually come here. Qin Mu closed the door, and the directorates were alarmed. They immediately called the other scholars out of their residences and said, "It's extremely dangerous here. Don't stay in scholars' residence temporarily. Otherwise, you might not even know how you died. Scholars, go hide it out for 2 days and come back after it's peaceful again." All the scholars were in a daze after seeing the devil god and Buddha that had just appeared out of thin air and knew that scholars' residence was not a safe place anymore. So they immediately left. Why are you not summoning the other devil gods? Dutian Devil King's voice asked in Qin Mu's mind, questioning him. Qin Mu shook his head. I've already fulfilled my promise and summoned your subjects. Now it's your turn to teach me the language of Yudu. Dutian Devil King was stunned for a moment. There are still 4 sculptures. Devil King, our oath is already half complete. Summoning 1 is summoning, same as summoning 5 is still summoning. Qin Mu then added, if you don't fulfill your promise, Earth Count will take you to Yudu. Dutian Devil King was so angry that he broke out into a laugh. What a crafty fellow, waiting for me to fall into the trap here. Very well, very well. Luckily, I also kept a trump card. I shall teach you the language of Yudu, but only 1 sentence. I didn't say I would teach you the entire language of Yudu when I made the oath. Qin Mu stared with his eyes wide open. Dutian Devil King was pleased with himself. I shall only tell you the words on this door, while as for the words on your scroll, you can forget about learning them. If you want to learn the entire language of Yudu, you can go down to Yudu and ask them yourself. These few days, Qin Mu had transformed into the form of Saturn's sovereign, and the words on the apparition of the gate had gradually become clearer. The words on the gate had been revealed and he could see them clearly, but the words of the scroll were still blurry. He probed, if I summon the other 4 sculpture over as well, will you teach me Yudu's writings on the scroll as well? No! Dutian Devil King was resolute. Qin Mu let out a sigh and smiled. In that case, teach me that sentence on the door. Dutian Devil King gave off a strange sound which seemed to be given by the soul. The weird sounds seemed like they were produced by billions of warped souls, and when Qin Mu tried it out, he realized that the strange language was unable to be produced by a human, so he couldn't help being astonished. Dutian Devil King chuckled. Some languages are not something a lowly life like you can ever learn. You produce your sounds through your throat, while the language of Yudu is not produced through the throat. When he spoke to hear, Qin Mu suddenly gave off a sound that wasn't produced through the throat. That sound came from his soul, and it sounded very similar to what Dutian Devil King had made. Dutian Devil King was slightly stunned and became on guard. This little devil is so clever, to actually realize that it was a sound produced by the soul upon learning that it didn't use the throat. If he continues to grow, I might not be able to beat him. It's best to kill such a clever devil as soon as possible. Qin Mu tried to produce sounds from the soul, and after a while, he finally learned the sentence completely. What's the meaning of this sentence? Dutian Devil King didn't reply, and Qin Mu was about to ask again, when the other said, This sentence means Gate of Earth Origin. Qin Mu was slightly startled. Gate of Earth Origin? You're not lying to me? Dutian Devil King chuckled. Lie to you? Why would I lie to you? It really means Gate of Earth Origin. There's no mistake. Qin Mu was skeptical. For Dutian Devil King to suddenly be so generous, there was definitely something wrong with the sentence. Qin Mu's gaze flickered, and he smiled. Dutian Devil King, you can leave my body now. I already used winter crystal iron to make a god statue mechanism for you so you can enter it. You can do whatever you want and summon any devil you want after that. Dutian Devil King smiled. You want to trick me into leaving so that the one-armed old monk can kill me? I'm not that stupid. Qin Mu shook his head and said to Old Ma and Cripple, Grandpas, I'll help you reattach your limbs now. Old Ma said, when you help us reattach our limbs, that devil god will likely take the chance to escape. Why don't we just refine him to death now? Qin Mu said solemnly, I can't go back on my word. I had promised to make a god statue mechanism for him and let him enter, so I can't eat my words. Old Ma didn't say anything more. Qin Mu took the bed out for Old Ma to lie on. He then took out Old Ma's arm from the medicinal cauldron and helped him to reattach it. He was busy reattaching when a spark flashed across the heart of his brows and landed on the 8-armed and 4-faced god statue with a sizzle. Cripple raised his eyebrows and beamed at him. This nuisance of a devil king. I can let you run 800 miles first. Dutian Devil King took control over the god statue, and discovering that he could move freely, he immediately sprinted away. Just as he ran out of Qin Mu's courtyard, he heard a clack after taking over a dozen steps, and the 2 joints on his legs locked closed. Clacking came from the joints in his entire body, which sounded like locks being locked tight shut. The 8 arms of Dutian Devil King were raised high in the air, and he had one leg raised up which couldn't be put down. His entire body was stiff and he was unable to move. You you tricked me! A flustered and exasperated voice came from the god statue as it scolded. Hu Linger's head popped out from Qin Mu's courtyard and took a glance at the devil god statue which was frozen in place. Didn't young master already tell you? He was going to be making a god statue mechanism for you. You see, haven't you been tricked by the mechanism instead? That's right, do you think young master is a male fox that has turned into a spirit? I think he's a little. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 210. Admit Defeat. Qin Mu reattached Old Ma's arm and Cripple's leg, placing the 2 elders in the medicinal cauldron. He had boiled a full decoction to cook to the 2 people while asking Hu Linger to maintain the fire beside the cauldron. He walked out of the room and saw the sky turning dark outside. He went out of the courtyard and there was nobody around. They should have gone away to hide from the danger, and only Dutian Devil King was still standing in the alley outside Scholar's residence, unable to move. Qin Mu went forward and opened up the god statue's stomach. Inside, there were hundreds of intricate gears, and he stretched his hands in to give the gears a few turns. Dutian Devil King immediately felt his legs able to move again and hurriedly began to run. After a few steps, he heard the clacking throughout his entire body, and his joints were all locked again. Big dragon, pull him back into the courtyard. Qin Mu told the dragon Qilin outside. The dragon Qilin wagged its tail and carried its bulging stomach forward to bite one of the legs of Dutian Devil King. It then dragged him across the floor and threw him into the corner of Qin Mu's courtyard with a clank. TCH. Come and fight me if you have the guts. Dutian Devil King scolded nonstop. What hero are you for locking me in place? Qin Mu turned a deaf ear to his cries and continued to mix the spirit herbs. Lightning suddenly appeared on the body of the god statue when the Devil King tried to fly out, but all kinds of runes lighted up. They were bright and contained lightning in the god statue. Dutian Devil King spewed out vulgarities again. The god statue was imprinted with the sealing runes of Roland's Golden Palace. Qin Mu had learned from the treasury there and had secretly placed them on the god statue while making it. Qin Mu was worried that the Devil King could still escape after entering the god statue, so he had added this kind of rune seal. Qin Mu finished mixing the herbs and looked seriously at Dutian Devil King, who was in the corner. You shall teach me all you know about the language of Yudu, then I'll release you. I'd be dumb to believe you, Dutian Devil King retorted angrily. Forget about tricking me again. Qin Mu had an honest face as he said sincerely, we can sign the Pact of Earth Count if that would put you at ease. At ease your ass. Hey, why is a Devil King like you spewing vulgarities like this? Vulgarities your ass. Forget about making me believe your words. If I believed you, I'd be the grandson of a tortoise. Cripple and Old Ma lay in the huge cauldron comfortably while the medicinal decoction bubbled and popped. Little Fox, increase the fire. Cripple narrowed his eyes and looked at his huge golden chain floating on the water. He then turned his head around and took a glance at the complaining Dutian Devil King before giving a laugh. This brat Moor has really grown up. I thought that you and I would have to make a move to get rid of this nuisance of a Devil King, but never would have I thought he would settle it by himself. Now I'm a little worried, not for him but for the people who are against him. Come to think of it, who did he learn to be so bad from? Such craftiness. Old Ma stared at Cripple. The huge golden chain on his neck had also floated up on the water, the gold plating almost getting cooked off it. Cripple was bewildered. There are only good people in the village, so who did this brat learn to be crafty from? Could he have gotten bad after leaving the village? Old Ma continued to stare at him. Cripple smiled. What are you looking at me for? Is there something on my face? You're making my hair stand on end with your staring. Old Ma, were you a constable in the past? Every time you look over, I can feel my hair standing up. Old Ma turned away and said indifferently, I've been a constable for dozens of years and later held an appointment in the Government Office of Justice. After I solved a huge case and became well known, Great Thunderclap Monastery found me and I stopped working as a constable. No wonder I always feel uneasy when you look at me. The monks of Great Thunderclap Monastery sure are busybodies, coming to find you even after you returned to your normal life. The two people were cooked the whole night, and during the process, Qin Mu changed the medicine a few times. When the day finally broke, Old Ma and Cripple got out and washed up. Qin Mu had already prepared breakfast, and they sat down to eat together. Kulinger ran to help Qin Mu wash the bowls while Cripple rose with a smile/moor. Old Ma and I won't stay here any longer, we're leaving. Qin Mu hurried, dried his hands, and said, I'll see Grandpa's out. Old Ma waved his hand. There's no need. Cripple and I are at ease seeing how well you're getting by. We're both old and you can already protect yourself. Cripple still propped himself on his cane and took a look at him with a smile. Old Ma is getting sentimental again. Oh well, come and see us off. If you don't, he will be sad for the next 2 or 3 days. Qin Mu followed them and sent them all the way down to the mountain. Grandpa Ma, Grandpa Cripple, your arm and leg were just reattached so you won't be able to exert too much force with them. You have to nurse them for a year or 2 years, training them frequently so that no hidden dangers are left behind. Old Ma nodded. Cripple sighed. I've gotten used to not having a leg in these 20-30 years. I'm actually not that comfortable with having the leg that was severed suddenly growing back. Old Ma felt the same. Having been disabled for over half my lifetime, I keep feeling I have no need for this hand that has returned. Qin Mu sent them to the mountain gate, and Cripple smiled. Go back. You don't have to send us any farther. Old Ma waved his hand. Remember to come home for New Year's. I'll definitely return. Qin Mu nodded seriously and saw them off. Old Ma and Cripple walked out of the capital, and Cripple sighed ruefully. The little baby that we picked up back then has really grown up, yet we had almost sent him away back then. Old Ma agreed with a nod. Almost. Luckily you stole him back. The little brat isn't that gullible after our teachings. I was always worried he would be at a disadvantage outside, but now I can return to the village at ease. When Cripple said this, he suddenly stopped. Old Ma also stopped. The two elders looked toward Mud River in front of them. On the river surface, a middle-aged man was standing. Despite the water churning under his feet, he didn't move an inch. Cripple raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile, Imperial Preceptor, your injuries are healed? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor nodded. My injuries are healed. How are the both of you? Old Ma exercised his shoulders and said in a solemn voice, We can still fight a battle. Cripple shook his leg and sighed. Moore said not to exert too much strength, but if we were to fight, I could still use one leg. Imperial Preceptor, you sure keep your composure. You knew we were in the room that day and knew I was the one who stole your items, but you still chose to leave and held yourself back until now. It must not have been easy. Eternal Peace, Imperial Preceptor said indifferently. My injuries were not healed back then, so I had no choice but to back off. Both of you are seniors and not evil people. Even when you were stealing, it was for disaster relief. I don't want to make a move on both of you, so as long you hand the Emperor's disc over, I'll leave you alone. We don't need to damage our good relationship. Emperor's disc? Cripple and Old Ma looked at each other and smiled. I've researched Emperor's disc, that toy, for over 20 years to no avail, so it's no problem even if I give you. However, I've already gifted it to another. Gifted it away? Stars suddenly appeared above Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's head, forming a bright river of stars. It was evident that his inner heart was no longer calm. Who did you give it to? The Palace Grandee of your Eternal Peace Empire. Cripple chuckled and left with Old Ma. Palace Grandee? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was stunned for a moment and looked at the back of the two people. He didn't make a move but said softly, the Emperor's disc was given to him? He actually dared to take it? Is he planning to rebel? The Emperor's disc is an artifact that was given to the founding emperor by a god, and it represents the imperial power. Furthermore, it is rumored to hide a secret. Should I ask for it from him? He stood on the heart of the river and muttered to himself for some time before shaking his head and turning to leave. Imperial power is not something that can be decided by an item, even if it's Emperor's disc. Imperial power comes from the support of people and has no relation to the Emperor's disc. In Scholar's residence, Qin Mu poured away the medicine decoction and washed the medicinal cauldron and medicinal furnace. After scrubbing them a few times until there were no more stains, he placed them under the sun to dry. Hu Linger was helping to clean up when she saw a jade hoop on the table and exclaimed in astonishment. Young master, the two elders left something behind. Qin Mu moved over to take a look and saw some writings on the jade hoop which looked very familiar. This is Grandpa Cripple's Emperor's disc. Grandpa Cripple must have left it here. When I went into the darkness with Village Chief, Grandpa Cripple had hung this Emperor's disc on my neck, but I didn't have to use it. Why did Grandpa Cripple leave it here? He always picks up stuff along the way and never loses anything. He shook his head and tied the Emperor's disc to his jade pendant while thinking to himself, I'll return it to him after I return to the village. He then dragged Dutian Devil King out and opened the stomach of the god statue. He did some adjustments and changed the orbit of the gears before saying, Devil King, you can move now. Dutian Devil King sneered, You're playing with me. I'm not moving. Little brat, wait for my true body to descend. I'll make your life a living hell then. Hu Linger stood up and crossed her paws on her waist. My young master has 100 ways to make your life a living hell. Qin Mu said meaningfully, Linger, that's too little. How could 100 be enough? Dutian Devil King chuckled. Little brat, feel free to show me what you got. If I got scared, I would disgrace my cultivation of over tens of thousands of years. Qin Mu advised him, What's the need for that? We are all from the devil path. Since I'm also of the devil path, you can just teach me the language of Yudu that you know and I'll let you off. Isn't that good for both of us? Bah! Dutian Devil King spat. Qin Mu sneered. I shall send you to Hall of Azure Yang to let Monk Fa Ching chant scriptures at you every day. Monk Fa Ching loves to redeem a devil, so he will definitely be overjoyed. Dutian Devil King sneered. I'm a devil that has become a god. Redeeming me with just that? Let that Monk Fa Ching come and let's see if he will redeem me or I will turn him into a devil. Qin Mu hesitated. Dutian Devil King was really devilish, so if Monk Fa Ching came to redeem him, he might actually end up turned into a devil instead. Young master, why hasn't he turned us into devils? Hu Linger was bewildered. Dutian Devil King shouted out in exasperation, You little fox devil, do you guys even need me to turn you into devils? You two were such from the very start. I admit defeat this time, Just end me. Qin Mu shook his head and said softly, I'm not that kind of person. Linger, let him follow you from now on. I'll teach you how to control this mechanism.